What's up, YouTube? Back at you with another video, another quick take. I got my guy, the resident Power Rangers talking host. Drew, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Drew Danger here. Good to be here and say hey to everybody.
Absolutely. So basically, there's been a recent documentary or episode of a show called Hollywood Demons. And they decided to do a segment on Power Rangers, and it was called Dark Side of Power Rangers. And I'm just basically going to read the synopsis summary of it, and then we'll get into it. So every 90s kid remembers Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the iconic live-action superhero show. Behind the vibrant spandex and high-flying karate kicks, however, lies a dark tale of tragedy and scandal, including never-before-seen footage. And then it also says viewers will watch never before seen footage of a fan turned gunman who had one horrifying mission to assassinate the show's most legendary star. And just a few years later, the same actor meets a grim fate. So I had certain reservations about even watching it in the first place because it just didn't seem like something positive. So I kind of want to break down, our thoughts into different sections and stuff like that. So I just want to get your initial thoughts on the documentary when it came out. So not necessarily you watching it yet, but when you saw that there was a docu-series about the dark side of Power Rangers, what crossed your mind?
If you're familiar with this, there's a show called The Dark Side of Wrestling. Okay. And if you've never seen that show, it's on Spike. But it goes into like the dark side. I mean, when you walk away from that thing, it's like, like really bad. I mean, real bad. So when I heard that they were doing a dark side of something to do with Power Rangers, I said, is this going to be like the dark side of wrestling? Because if it is, we're in for a roller coaster of a time. That's exactly what I thought.
Yeah, I think for me, it just felt like, why are they doing this?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought, because the first place I saw it was on Facebook, and I was just like, I'm probably, never going to watch this because, why? You know what I mean? And then
right.
I just decided to, give it a watch. I had some food to eat. I was like, I'm not doing anything else. So, let me check it out. But I was just hoping that it wasn't going to be something that made the subculture of Power Rangers and being a Power Rangers fan look bad, and I feel like it did just that. So of all the things that was shown in the episode, what stood out to me was the initial Yellow Ranger story, and I felt like this was kind of more so about actors. I feel like they should have retitled it "The Dark Side of the Actor's Life of Power Rangers" or something, if that makes sense. I feel like it had nothing to do with the Rangers itself and had more so to do with the life and times of a working actor. So what did you think about the initial Yellow Ranger's name? And I don't remember her name, but what did you think about her and her story?
Thuy Tran?
No, I'm talking about the other one, the first one, the one who was in the pilot episode.
Oh, Audri Dubois.
Yeah.
Okay, so Audri's story was known. So the thing you have to realize is a lot of these stories were told already. And they were put on YouTube by the people themselves. So Audri had told her story on YouTube herself. And she's told it quite a few times, actually. So when I heard it, the story she didn't tell was about the guy in the putty suit that they used, I guess, some sort of wetsuit that he was wearing underneath of it, which is a bad idea. Me being a surfer, I can tell you, when you're done using the purpose of that suit, it needs to come off. You need to take it off because, you wear that thing around, you will be baking 100 degrees and find yourself on the floor passed out. And that's what happened to this young person that was wearing the suit. But it showed what she wanted to tell was the brutality of Saban, because Saban was non-union. And he didn't care a lot of the time about people. Let's be honest, the majority of the time.
Yeah.
So it showed what she was trying to tell us and show us was, if I sign up for this show, what the heck is going to happen to me? Because he's going to make me do some things that may be dangerous. And he's not going to give two cares about it, because not only did this guy pass out, they said, I'll give $100 to somebody that puts on the suit, flops around, and does the rest of the scene. Who wants to do it? Right.
And somebody did that shit.
Yeah. And somebody did it. So it's like, is this really a production you want to be a part of, knowing that they're going to put you in these dire straits?
But what's crazy is that she still wanted to do it, though. The only thing was that she couldn't afford to actually travel from, I guess, Arizona, where she lived, to LA to do the show. So I think they were only paying the actors like $700 or $750 before taxes. So she asked them, to if it could be $1,500, and I guess they said no, and then they just went and got Thuy instead. Yeah,
that was the thing about it. Her biggest regret was because it became such a success. And then there's a question mark on her life to say, if I did stay longer, what could have happened? A curiosity to her, but that's why she says at the time, my move seemed like the right move. But later on, I was just curious about if I stayed, if I did stay.
But let's ask yourself a question though. But does that really showcase a dark side of Power Rangers outside of what happened to the guy in the putty suit? You know what I'm saying? Especially if you already told the story, because they're getting paid to do this. It's not like they're doing this for free or they're volunteer. No, they're getting paid to kind of squeeze that sponge and to kind of milk it. And I'm just like, well, and we've talked about it before. It's just like, you get presented a contract and they say, yo, if you don't sign this contract, there's going to be 10,000 other people that are going to sign it. And it's really kind of on you. You know what I'm saying? Walter is still alive to tell the tale. Amy Jo is still alive to tell the tale. JDF, you know what I'm saying? Things worked out for him, the rest of his script for the most part relative to everybody else. So I just feel like that's just one of my criticisms of the documentary. And I'm not saying I agree with Haim Saban or none of that, but that's just the norm of business. And they said that in the thing. They were like, yo, when you're young, you're just trying to make money. You're just trying to get out there. So you're just going to take whatever it is that you can take,
And that's true. If you're a young up and coming actor, you're not union, you're trying to get out there, discovered, get some body of work. They're not incorrect about that. Not at all. And, I think with Audri, I think she had some expectations for, TV shows. I think she did. I think that she thought things were going to go down a second, because in some of her reactions and comments, it's almost like she's talking about being on set like she's a union actor and this is a union job. You know what I mean?
Oh, talking about being on the set of Power Rangers.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then come to find out it's not a union job, and she didn't know anything about acting. Well, non-union means this, because when people think about it like this, when people think about working on movie sets, they see the glamorous stuff. They see the union, the Brad Pitt money, right? They see the lavish lifestyle. They don't really know, when you're on a non-union or a smaller budgeted film, that things don't exactly go down like that. That's the fantasy people naturally have. So I think in some way, respectfully, she thought, oh, this is going to be like Easy Street. This is going to be like this. It's like, no. This is what non-union means. And this is the money we have. And this is what we're paying. And this is what you got to do. You got to be able to do, if not all, most of your stunts. There is no stunt double right now. They didn't get a stunt double and stunt workers at that level until, oh gosh, what was it? Season 3? Later on in season 2 or something like that. It was down the road. And so, I think she expected, she had an image in her mind of what she thought things were going to be. And it ended up not matching up to that image. And I think that's ultimately why she didn't do it. But she feels like, hey, if I did do it, it would have worked out.
It would have. I mean, because I'm looking at her IMDb, because again, I didn't know who she was. I knew there was a different set of Rangers for the pilot. Even what's his name from Joanna Man? Miguel Nunez. Yeah,
when they were doing the bio, man. whole thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, so I knew there was like a different set of people. And obviously he didn't do it because he went on to do other, other things, whatever. But yeah, she only has 3 credits on her IMDb. It's Hollywood Demons, which is what we're talking about now. The Mighty Morphin freaking pilot that she did, and then I guess Sasaki Sterling. Yeah, so she didn't really have, a career beyond that. And again, I'm not saying that she's wrong, because at the end of the day, any decisions that you make that you feel is for your best interest, you're not wrong for that. If you're, you know what I'm saying? If it's for your health, if it's for your safety, if it's for the highest good of yourself and your family, then do what you got to do. But at the same time, I just feel like for the point of this documentary, I don't know why she was there, because that doesn't showcase the dark side of Power Rangers. And the whole thing of the putty being in the suit doesn't really substantiate that, because I'm pretty sure that's not the first time that there has been a television or movie set where it was like a hazardous, working environment. And again, I think that might have been the only, story we heard that was that, drastic or hyperbolic, where, they're in a freaking desert and 100 degrees, and then you got this guy burning up in the damn, putty suit, and then he's, convulsing on the ground and nobody's there to help him. And then I guess whoever's in charge of the set at that time is like, hey, well, we got to keep it moving. Who wants $100 so we can keep this going? Because at that time, it's like they probably were working on a very shoestring budget, because a lot of people didn't even believe in the damn show at that point. So I could probably see something like that happening on an ultra low budget type of, set like that was. But then as soon as they got things up and running, it wasn't really the same. I mean, if anything, because it was a non-union project, they worked, 12 to 13 hours instead of the standard, SAG 8 to 10. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to say I feel bad, because I really don't, for her, in terms of you made a decision. We talked about that before. It's like you make a decision, then there's certain things that come with the decisions that you make. So it's like, I can't really, out of everything I've seen in that episode, that was probably the one thing that I had the least amount of, how should I say, empathy or sympathy for, because it's just a business at the end of the day. No, it's either going to do it anyway and then see how it works, or you don't. And then if you didn't, cool. But that doesn't, again, in my opinion, it doesn't really showcase a dark side of Power Rangers, in the way that they're trying to paint it out to be.
Right. And I think, buddy, they had her there because she was the original, the first, the pilot one. So, out of respect, they had her there. So I think that's ultimately what that was about.
Yeah, but I also want to piggyback off of that, though, because I feel like if I was a producer of this show or this segment, my whole thing is I got to have everybody there. Because even from the aspect of Austin St. John, it would have made more sense to me that he was around to kind of speak on what they were talking about. Even though I don't like him, but I'm just saying, like, you want to have Walter, you want to have David Yost, because David Yost went through some things on the set. Why was he not there? That's what I'm saying. They need to stop doing these things about Mighty Morphin and otherwise, and you don't have the key people there to speak on. And now, obviously, JDF is not around anymore, unfortunately. But it would have made more sense to me to have Amy Jo, David, all of them around, just so we could have, it could be from the aspect of the Rangers themselves rather than the random psychiatrist guy, you know what I'm saying, who's like trying to, psychoanalyze all of these people and try to say, oh yeah, this is why this is like that. Because to be honest with you, I don't want the business aspect behind that show to kind of get in the way of what that show was, because you and I both know Power Rangers did a lot for a lot of people. And I think the dark side of Power Rangers is literally trying to make it seem like it was just almost like the what was that documentary called about Drake and Josh, and like the stuff that was going on with Drake Bell and how he was abused on set and all the different things that was going on in Nickelodeon. Like, I feel like that was something that needed to be said, because that's serious. But I think with particularly her and let's say some of the other actors, I don't think it was really necessary, especially if you're not going to have all the originals that are alive there.
Right. Well, see, that's the biggest question everybody has. Why didn't Walter, Austin, Amy, and David Yost, why weren't they there?
Yeah.
But you know, it's the answer, you know, well, it's my opinion, but it's an opinion that a lot of people shared, was that they've got, I think that they don't want to address certain things, especially Alston and Walter, because like their stories are in question. Like if you go on their fan word, they've told some stories that were in question, and this documentary actually contradicted what they had to say. And I think
as far as them leaving
that's
the
the
show,
thing. Yeah, because there's that story about Thuy, you know, that comes up, and it contradicted everything that they said. Because for years they've been selling a story, because Thuy unfortunately is not here to speak on that.
right?
You know, they've sold their own little weird narrative of what they thought, you know.
Right.
And so when the story comes out from somebody that was there, that was not them, that was an executive, but he was there, and he goes, yeah, this went down. And she was the one that spoke, because guess what? When she was like, oh no, like, what did I say? And all that stuff like that. She was, it came from a place of, wait a minute. She didn't want to do that. You see, you know, it's like she did something she didn't want to do, and it went really bad, and now she feels bad about it. You see? And it's like, well, who put you up to it then? You see?
Walter and Austin.
There you go. See, you know they did that to her because she was the nice, you know, more subservient and respectfully. Like, I just mean, like, she was not the outgoing in that way, kind of
right. Very soft. From what? Yeah, on the outside.
Right. And they didn't have problems with her. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, who are we going to put on stage to tell our little message?
Let's get her to do it.
Get the one that they know that they can be cool to talk, and that's pretty and nice and warm. Put her up on the stage, right? Because then they won't see it coming. Now she said it. Here we go.
First things first, rest in peace Thuy Tran, man, because even listening to her friend talk about that whole story, and I know you told me about it before, but just to hear it from the horse's mouth, and then just to find out that the one who was driving recklessly was the one that walked away with no scratch, with not even a scratch, and then she's permanently paralyzed, and Thuy is gone, which to me is crazy. But I like that you brought that up, because let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah,
because the way that they spun that story for years is that they wanted to just get paid union wage, you know, like I said, for lack of a better word, they wanted to get paid union wages. Even if it wasn't a union production, they wanted what they get paid or got paid in season 2 and onward to be, you know, union money. And to find out that watching it, that is because they wanted a percentage of the toy sales.
Yes.
And because even the guy that said that, he was like, that wasn't going to happen. I'm like, yeah. That's probably not going to happen. Now, I think in this day and age, they would have gotten paid for toy sales. Like if Power Rangers was a union production in 2025, that would have been something that would have been more realistic. But I guess given the time that happened and the show was the first of its kind, no, you're bugging. So the fact that they walked away, and I mean, I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but my takeaway is that they walked away because they didn't get a percentage of the toy sales. And I'm not saying that they're wrong for at least asking for it, because think about it. If I'm the CEO and you're one of my actors on a show and you're getting paid $750 per episode, and that's just all you're getting, that's the only piece of the pie that you're getting, and I'm selling toys with your face on it, your likeness, and I'm selling more toys than DC, freaking Sesame Street, and then the other, you know, big, I don't know if it was Marvel toys or something like that, but you know what I'm talking about. Like basically
they had competition, with Marvel, because the X-Men show was, you know, the animated show was going, and that was a huge hit. You know, and DC had Batman the Animated Series,
So, and I'm generating over $1 billion, and even they said like that was $1 billion back then. Think about that money now, adjusted for inflation. I think it's not. It's only right. Again, this is just me speaking from a moral aspect. Like, it's only right that you cut them in on the piece of the pie too, because not that because their argument is that, well, we created the character, and they're like, no, you didn't create the character. We just picked you. You could easily have been somebody else. Okay, fine, sure. but they weren't wrong for asking for it. But the fact that they didn't say that years and years later, they didn't say that, oh, we walked away from the show because Haim Saban wouldn't give us a piece of the toy sales. And this is why I always respected JDF, is because it wasn't about the money for him. It wasn't about the money for him. And that's why it worked out for him and it didn't work out for anybody else, because he looked at it like, well, I might not be getting a whole lot now, but what he didn't get in that moment, he got a lot in the back end.
Right. And see, there's the story too, that's a very true story, where Haim Saban talked to the three of them and said, you know what? I'm going to give you a pay raise. And a pay raise was actually put down. But they wanted the percentage because the percentage meant millions. Because
so, I'm just sorry, but do you know how much the pay raise was? Did anyone ever say? Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to ask that.
I'd have to ask about the dollar amount, but it was definitely more than $750. You know, it was a significant amount, was what I was told. It would have been probably on the scale of what JDF was getting and Amy and Yost, what they got, it'd been on that same scale.
So probably it was like four figures probably per episode.
Yeah. So and then other perks were going to come with it. It's just that they thought of today, now, you know, and they wanted that percentage because I did have a friend calculate the percentage. So if they got 1% of the toy sales, they each would have ended up with around estimated about $5 million.
Wow.
Okay.
If they had just gotten 1% of the
if they had gotten 1%. But here's the thing, then you got to hand each one of them that, and then you got to hand the other three, right? And then it starts getting like that.
Well,
that's the thing about it.
Yeah, but in the grand scale, it was still a penny on the dollar that Haim Saban was making. Though.
Right.
So it's like they would have been getting a lot of money. But I guess from Haim Saban's perspective is that, like, you're not putting any of the money up to do all of these things.
Correct.
So I get that rationale, but if I was Haim Saban, I would have made sure that they were good, because this is something that 50 Cent says. And, 50 Cent is like in charge, or like one of the figureheads behind the Power universe, on Stars. And he said something in an interview that I liked. He was saying that, like, he always made sure that his actors were good. And we're talking about the original series of Power, where, he had to loan Omari Hardwick, 6 figures, just to keep him, good throughout the filming of a certain season until, he got his money. And then he was saying, like, you can't win consecutive championships if the team is hurting. You know what I'm saying? Like, make sure everybody's good, and then you'll be able to get the most out of them. Because really, let's think about it. I definitely think that the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie would have been more successful with the original 6.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it would have been more successful. I feel like when it dropped, it was still a relative success. You know what I'm saying? But I guess the fact that, one, it wasn't the original colors, because it wasn't the Green Ranger, it was the White Ranger, and then you got 3 new Rangers. You know what I'm saying? So it was a lot different than what I guess kids were, expecting to see at that time.
Right.
And that's Haim Saban's fault.
It is his fault. And, me being a kid that was there when all this happened, being a pretty good age at that time, I was already in the 2 digits. Gosh, what was I, 11? Around there, 10, 11. By the time the movie came out, I was 12, 12, almost 13.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. So, when the movie hit, it did its thing, but everybody was hoping, because, that's when I met Walter, Austin, and Thuy, was when the movie came out. It was that weekend. I met them. They had an event in California where you could meet them. And every kid was like, when are you coming back to the show? Why aren't you in the movie? Are you going to be in the movie? For kids that didn't see it yet, and they were like, no, not in the movie. We're not coming back. That was the big question. Everybody wanted them back, and everybody, I don't care what people said, this is the truth. Hear it from me. Everybody wanted the Green Ranger powers back. everybody wanted Green Ranger
instead of White Ranger.
Right. Yeah. Not to say White Ranger did his thing, he did, but people prefer Green. Not because he was the first, but Green was cool.
Yeah.
Green was cool. JDF dressed cooler when he was the Green Ranger. He carried himself cooler as the Green Ranger. It was like they tried to take him when he became the White Ranger. After a while, at first it was kind of the same thing, just a different color to a lot of levels. But then they made him more. He started dressing
more
like
formal.
More preppy and formal.
Yeah,
and,
more formal.
Yeah, see, you got it. Like, and then everybody was kind of like, well, I don't really
like more smooth, really
like
more smooth type versus the martial artist sleeveless type of hoodie, urban type outfits. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, like it changed, and he said so himself. He was like, even my fighting, because like they didn't want me to be brutal with the fighting. They wanted me to calm that down and change that and change the image and change. He's like, and I didn't like that. He was like, the way that the Green Ranger was originally set up, when he became a good guy, like that was the magic. That was it. He's like, and that's what I liked. And he's like, when it took me to the other stuff, I was like, okay, now they got me wearing stuff I would not wear, stuff like that. Like when he went to Zeo, the outfits that he wore were horrible.
I mean, because he still looked good. You know what I'm saying? That's debatable. You know what I'm saying? It depends on like, what you like most in like style. Because to me, like I would dress like that. Like whether it's, the way that he dresses as a Green Ranger, White Ranger, or Zeo and onward. Because it's like, like he was my inspiration. So it's like I pull stuff, from that.
See,
even
my thing was Tommy Oliver was the ninja tabi boots tucked in to the pants.
Right.
See, when you got to Zeo, he was like wearing work boots, baggy clothes, because they took the clothes from Austin St. John and Cardenas, and they didn't get him any new stuff because that's what he said.
Are you serious?
Dead serious.
Oh shit!
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, wow. And so they would swap around. That's why Karen Ashley said, "I wore tweed suit. Literally, I wore tweed suit, and I'm several inches shorter than tweed." And they just stuck it in. So the same with their regular street clothes. It's like, oh, you're changing colors. Okay, who was green before? Okay, who's green now? You're getting all their old clothes. Wow. That's what they did.
I never noticed that. That I would have to go back and actually kind of see.
Yeah,
like,
that's why
like
Johnny he got all JDF's green stuff because now he was the green Zeo instead of Black Mighty Morphin. So they gave him that stuff. Cardenas, got blue, Yost stuff. That's and especially JDF. He ended up. He said those work boots were crazy. That's why when you see him on the one where he goes on the Native American mission with his brother, he's walking up that hill the way he's walking because like those shoes are 10 sizes too big, like.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's why. Because it was like that's what I'm saying is like it wasn't his identity anymore. He was wearing clothes of somebody else that were meant to fit them. It wasn't him.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
But that's just a testament to how cheap Saban was. And I kind of liken him to Mr. Krabs now because it's just like you're making so much fucking money, and it's like your ass don't even want to spend like just the extra, $2 just to fucking just spruce things up and keep it fresh. Because this is I equate what happened to them, and I'm talking about the original 6 to the 96-97 Chicago Bulls. And he was what the fuck is his name? Jerry what the fuck is the basically he was the GM or not the GM, but he was one of the guys behind the Chicago Bulls. And him and Michael Jordan didn't get along, and he was the one that ripped the team apart. They just had a three-peat. And then he said, "Okay, I'm gonna trade away Scotty and I'm gonna rebuild the team again." Why are you going to fucking rebuild the team? You got an all-star team that just won 3 consecutive championships, and they all want to stay together. And you mean to tell me you just want to just rip it all apart because you think that's a good idea? That's the same thing with Haim Saban. Like, you have basically this 6, if I have it right, this 6 people generated you $1 billion in a matter of a couple years, right? Because what? Mighty Morphin debuted in 1992 or 93?
93.
93. So, but then again, no, because they weren't even there for that long. because the movie. So they shot the they shot the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie in '94 for it to have come out in '95.
Right.
But irregardless of the fact, this is everybody wants to see them. It's like an R&B group. When you go platinum or multi-platinum with a certain combination of people, when you take somebody out or you take two people out and you put somebody else in there, it's not going to be the same. And some people, they might just say, I don't want to watch it anymore, or I don't want to listen to them anymore because it's not the same thing. Yeah. And he didn't realize that, because I feel like, yes, we still had JDF and he was the one that was, carrying the load for a while after that. But that was when the popularity of Power Rangers, and I mean, in a sense, that viral, pandemonium popularity started to decline. Because we both know that, once Tammie left Turbo, it wasn't nearly as popular when you compare it to season 1 and season 2 of Mighty Morphin. Right. And who's to blame? It's him. Because, I get it. It's like, I can still get rich and generate millions without these guys. But just think about how much money you would be making if not only you made sure that they were taken care of, but you kept that same combination together. And at least if they're going to all part ways, it would have been on like great terms. Because I feel like in an alternate universe, if they had stayed, I think that, we probably would have gotten a Zeo with all of them. We would have probably gotten a Turbo. So we probably would have maybe gotten like 2 to 3 iterations of Power Rangers, maybe with the original 6. And I feel like they only would have stayed if they were financially comfortable. Because if they're not financially comfortable and they feel like, I'm not taken care of, my finances aren't in order, they're going to start to feel like, I could probably further my career elsewhere. Right. And that's what happened. And like, his pockets probably didn't suffer, but long-term Power Rangers isn't as big. Like, basically it could have still kept a noose around the neck of the 90s if he had kept them together. They could have had that could have been their three-peat. So it could have been Mighty Morphin, it could have been Zeo, and then it could have been Turbo, and then you move on. That was his ideal anyway. Because he was saying that, he said, if you started the show, you can stay as long as you want. And that's why, if Amy Jo left because she wanted to leave, David Yost left because he wanted to leave. Same thing with Tammie. Same thing with JDF. He wanted to leave. He didn't push them out. So just imagine if organically we just gotten like that good trilogy of a season with those three. And I feel like it would have meant more if it was all 6 of them passing the torch, or all 5 of them passing the torch, and not just Tammie passing the torch, to them.
Right. That's the thing about it, was that Saban messed up a lot of stuff, because like I was a big VR Troopers fan. And that was a show that had a lot of potential to do a lot of things. And it was really cool. And it was actually darker than Power Rangers, because they got away with a little bit more on VR Troopers. They got to kill off certain things and do some stuff. And a little bit. And the challenge of the show, finding Ryan's dad, was an interesting story. But again, Saban went, all right, here we go. You know what? It's making crazy, crazy money, because there was times where it even beat Power Rangers in ratings. And they were like, oh, yeah, but the toy sales aren't good enough. Well, Saban made the wrong deal. He went to Kenner and gave them just a basic readout, and that was that. He should have done the toys through Bandai. They did the Power Ranger stuff and really made them special like he did for Power Rangers. And that would have been it. If the toy sales, because everybody that worked on VR Troopers, they all said that. Brad Hawkins, Michael Hollander, Sarah Brown, they all said that. Like, the thing that set us back was the toys. We didn't have Zeonizers. I don't know if you know this, but the Zeonizer that transformed them, everybody I knew that had one got one from McDonald's. Really? Okay, McDonald's made them. The Saban's toy company never even made them. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was cheap. It was like, and that's what they all said. They said, if they just made the Zeonizers and did everything through Bandai and really put it out there, he could have had 2 back and forth rival shows, and then take it a step further and put us together VR Troopers and Power Rangers together in an episode. They did it with Masked Rider, with Kamen Rider for Power Rangers. So why didn't they put the VR Troopers? The same company, everybody knew it was a no-brainer. They're like, oh, this is going to happen. They all thought that was going to happen. And it never happened. Saban is cheap. He's real cheap. And if he was smarter, he would have had the other Japanese shows that were trying to mimic Power Rangers, like Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad and Tattoo Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills. He would have worked a deal. You feel? He would have worked a deal with them to do that, you know, and incorporated them. And that would have made him triple his money. And it would have lifted those shows too.
Yeah, but that's what happens when, you know, you're a Mr. Krabs, you know, type of guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like you gotta, you know, I guess in that level of business, you know, there are certain risks that you have to take, or you got to spend money to make money. And this guy just didn't want to, you know, do that, because I think he felt like I can just kind of get by with just the base minimum show and just doing the bare minimum and trying to get the max amount of results. But yeah, you can do that. And he did it for, you know, 2 years and all that. And then again, it started to go on the decline. And then again, when you get rid of the actors, you're constantly replacing people, you're getting rid of that massive audience. And then now the only people are going to stay are us, who are the really super huge Power Ranger fans that are going to stay loyal to each season. Because again, I watched every season up until, you know, Jungle Fury, and then I stopped. And that's a long time, you know what I'm saying, where I was watching the show. But just imagine again, like if things had been different, or even the actors themselves, you know, Austin, Walter, and you know, Thuy, if they had just said, you know what, because you guys are actors, you're not businessmen, so therefore you're not entitled to toy sales. The only types of actors that can really negotiate that are like the top tier Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger stars. Those are the guys that can go to a studio or producer and say, I want this, because without me, you can't do any of that. So you got to cut me in on this. They can do that. Or they can say, all right, this film is coming out, I want a percentage of the box office, you know, back end. They can do that. When you're just coming out, you're just starting, you can't ask for that. And that's the thing with business. That's why I never really felt bad for them, because when you know how business works, you can't jump the gun like that unless, again, you are a star and they're banking on you. They need you. That's why I was like, we want you, but we don't need you. So if you're asking, you know, for a cut on toy sales that you're not investing in, you can go. And they left.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if your objective was to just get more money, he gave you that. He gave you that. Apparently, like I said, if what you're saying is true, and I believe it's true, because from season 1 they were getting paid $750. The show generated $1 billion, or just the entire franchise at that point generated, you know, hundreds of million, damn near $1 billion at that point. Okay, and they gave you a movie deal on top of that. So technically, they knew a movie was on the horizon at that point. They knew that. They knew that. So that was in the contract. They had a 3-movie deal they had. So you knew that things were going to get better, and he offered to pay you more. Because I'm just trying to gauge in my mind. So I'm like, if they were getting paid $750, again, it was a 4-figure, how should I say, increase. So I feel like they probably could have been getting paid, maybe now $1,500 per episode. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? And again, when it comes to working actors or working class Americans, you're getting paid $1,500 per episode. And they were doing crazy amounts of episodes back then.
Yes.
Because how many? Yeah, because how many episodes was one season of Power Rangers? Wasn't that like 40 or 50? 50 episodes?
Yeah.
So
it was
where's my phone?
About 40. I think it was around 40. So if you take that $1,500 per episode, okay,
you get $75,000. $75K. That before any taxes or anything like that. That's a humongous jump from what you were making before. Now, all right, now let me just do the math real quick. So then let's say, okay, so if because how many episodes was in season 1? I don't think it was as many in season 2. Do you know?
Let me see if I can get that for you real quick. I think I should be able to get it.
Because either way, because I just said, let's say, 50 episodes, which I really don't think it was 50 episodes. I don't think it was 50 episodes in season 1. It definitely wasn't.
More than Power Rangers for season 1.
Because Green with Evil was the 13th episode. That was around, the early teens of episodes. And then Tammie comes back. It didn't even take Tammie that long to come back when it was like Return of an Old Friend. And I don't remember what episode number that was, but it wasn't that long. I think maybe they did like 10 episodes without Tammie. And then he comes
According to
back.
this, buddy, they're saying that Mighty Morphin season 1 in its original format had 60 episodes.
Wow. Okay. So watch. And this is before taxes. So $750 times 60. So that means they're getting paid $45,000. So again, based off of the math that I just did, that from $45,000 before taxes to $75,000 before taxes, that's still a substantial jump.
Yeah.
And if that's all you wanted, then why did you leave? Because again, I always bring this back to the Time Out Last Dragon thing. It's the same thing. Because you're thinking of dollars. Oh, okay, all right, cool. So if he made, X amount of millions of dollars on this, then I should ask for more. If he's getting this much, I'm the star of the movie, so then I should get that much. No, you shouldn't. You're just an actor. And take it from an actor myself, the goal is we just want to make money from doing what we love to do. You see what I'm saying? Because they think you can just jump from working actor to star overnight. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. That takes a lot of longevity in a business to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And they made it seem like they left because he still wanted to pay them $750 for all of their work on Power Rangers. That's not true because y'all got to jump and pay. Because I feel like if there was no raise, then I don't think JDF would. Well, maybe JDF probably would have stayed, but I don't think Amy Jo would have stayed. I don't think David Yost would have stayed. And those are, I would say, they're probably the more traditional actors out of all of them, other than Walter, because Walter was the one who also had a background in acting prior, to Power Rangers. So they stayed. That's what I'm saying. So it's like I feel like Haim, Austin, Walter, they cheated us out of that because we could have gotten that three-peat and we didn't get it. And I'm thinking in my head like, that movie would have just had a bit more substance. Because the main reason why I love, the movie is because of JDF, straight up. I watch it because of him. Yeah, like everybody, but he's the main reason why, I watch it still. But that's on them. And given that context now, it's just like, I'm not going to say I look at them different because I still have a high amount of respect for Walter regardless. But I definitely I'm not listening to what they have to say as far as that's concerned ever again in life because you got what you wanted. It just took some work. You had to put the work in. That's what I'm saying. You don't just come into a situation and then you get everything you want in that type of industry or environment. You're gonna have to do your due diligence. You're gonna have to pay your dues. They paid their dues. It's like, all right, you get paid $750. Hypothetically, you're getting $1,500 now per episode. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And you're getting paid per episode. It's not like they were getting paid every week. No, you're getting paid per episode, dog, before taxes. But anyway, because I can go on and on about that. But I also wanted to.
Oh, go ahead, buddy.
No, I was just gonna say that I wanted to call bullshit on the backlash that they got back in the 90s. And I'm talking about the quote unquote violence on the show. Mm-hmm. Because I was a kid growing up watching Power Rangers my whole life. And not one time did that show make me think, oh, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to punch a kid in the face. Or because I love the Dragon Dagger, that means I'm going to go get, a kitchen knife and go stab somebody. Because it reminds me of the Dragon Dagger. And I feel like they caught a lot of backlash that just wasn't deserved. And I just feel like because maybe Power Rangers was too big for their liking, that the one thing that they could use to attack the show, they used it to attack the show. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that because like I said, or like you said, you were 11, 12 years old back when the show was at its peak. So what did you think about all of that?
I had been down that road before because when Ninja Turtles came out, parents were saying that about the movie and parents were saying that about Ninja Turtles in general. That's why in England, they were known as Hero Turtles, not Ninja, because they said Ninja was violent. And the animation cells, they switched from Michelangelo's nunchucks because they said, oh, those are dangerous. So that's why he switched to the grappling hook because they did not like that. And then when the Turtle movie came out, they said, oh, Casey Jones is too scary. He's too serious. Shredder's too scary, too serious. The movie's too dark. can we just lighten up? That's why the second movie went the way it did. No Casey Jones, Shredder wearing the purple like the cartoon. They have the goofy Razor and Tonka and did all the goofy, silly stuff more. They didn't use their weapons, exception of Donatello. He was the only one allowed to use his weapons the entire movie. That's why, because the parents jumped in, and then the mom said one of the talking turtles said a cuss word, which it never did. They played it, and it just says, "I love being a turtle." And she's like, it says something evil. Mm-hmm. And so when you do shows that involve action, they automatically go there, whether if it's Transformers or G.I. Joe, like they always try to take it down. Now G.I. Joe, nobody ever got shot,
Right.
So because they were worried about that. So they did it a certain way. But I'm going to put it to you like this. Let's go back to 1977. Star Wars came out, okay? How many stormtroopers did Han Solo and Luke Skywalker shoot in the first movie? A whole bunch. How many did Princess Leia shoot? A whole bunch. How many characters died in the original Star Wars? A whole bunch. The whole X-Wing squad was taken out. Their ships blow up. They don't switch the screen. You see the characters actually blow up in their X-Wings. Am I right?
Yeah.
And this was in 1977. Okay. So kids are already seeing stuff like this. Empire Strikes Back, the good guys lost. It's the biggest movie in history, the only one of its kind, where a big franchise film ended on a cliffhanger and the good guys lost. And the main hero lost his hand. You see? So
which is way gruesome than anything we've seen in Power Rangers ever.
Yep. So we were used to this. So when they did this thing with the Turtles, and then they did, the thing with Power Rangers, and then they started to try to jump on every show. And then Batman's too violent because Batman Returns was too scary. Yeah, it was a little bit of a weird movie. I'm not going to lie. But was it, and that was the thing about it, was they always, they're on Oprah going, my children just saw the most violent thing on the Power Rangers.
Full of shit.
They shook each other's hands. Oh, it was a handshake that was so violent. They always do that. They've always been pointing out things like this, especially in the 80s. The 80s was like the time where they brought in, I don't know if you know, the psychologist. That's why when you watch a lot of shows from the 80s, you see PhD, blah, 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 Dr. So-and-so. You're like, what's that about? I found out they were the psychologists for the show. So they had a psychologist on most of the shows, cartoons of the 80s. And they would go, okay, He-Man, he's got to have good morals and he's got to have this and he's got to have that. All right, cool. That's a given. We were going to do that. No. You really have to sell it because if you watch the original He-Man cartoon, he never gets in a sword fight because I said sword fights were violent. So he just would have it and he'd use it to throw it at things or knock something out of the way like a boomerang. But he never, he was only allowed to punch at certain times because they said, oh, you can't punch a whole bunch. You can't kick people because that's just too violent. By the time Thundercats came around, they said, okay, we can do some sword fights. We can do this a little bit more. But there were still certain restrictions on it. G.I. Joe, complete restrictions. Their soldiers, they can't kill each other. They can't shoot each other. So you'll just have lasers bouncing back and forth. Nobody gets hit. Vehicles blowing up. Nothing happens. That's what they had to do. So this situation and subject has been around. Now, when Power Rangers hit, the problem was that it was the number one show. Okay. And every time you get a number one show, parents will complain and other studios will complain because it's the top show that's got your kids' attention.
Exactly.
And that's really what it gets down to. And the parents, they don't really care about that. They're just more annoyed that their kids are in front of the TV watching something they like, and let's get real. The parents wanted a paycheck. So if they could go, hey, I want a lawsuit against the Power Rangers and here's where it's violent and they could prove it, they're going to get paid. Okay. That lady with the Ninja Turtle thing was expecting to get paid. Okay. That's the thing about it. They want to settle out of court or go through it and get a big payment, whatever. It's all about money and greed and making it off the backs of your kids, which is really jacked up. because then you ruin it for every kid in the United States that loved the original Ninja Turtles or loved what they were doing on Power Rangers. So they get like that every single time, you know. Oh, this is violent. And I remember when Mortal Kombat, the video game, the first one, came out. Oh boy, was that a big one, because you know they had the fatalities in it, right? So you knew that was going to come with problems. And they did jump all over that one for sure. Yeah. But again, you didn't see anybody taking a knife out and thinking Dragon Dagger and then cut, you know, and you didn't see anybody go, you know, do all this goofy stuff that everybody's saying somebody got killed because they got jump kicked off the side of a cliff, you know, like it didn't happen. You know, what's funny is, and I don't mean to say funny is a wrong word, but what is strange is after those shows, right, we had all these acts of violence that had happened, you know, just because, well, parents weren't keeping tabs on the kids and they just ran wild. Right. And then kids just did stupid stuff on their own. You know, they could blame the Matrix and all this stuff all they want. No, you just had kids that were disturbed. There are just some people that are just disturbed. Has nothing to do with what they're watching. They just they got an itch to be disturbed and they do weird things. So that's just a given. But they want to blame. You know, the name of the game, buddy, is blame. Blame. When things happen, who do we blame? Who do we blame next? This person. And the next time we go over here and we blame them and we blame that. And now we all want to get paid. So blaming getting paid corrupts people. And that's what I think happened with Power Rangers.
No, absolutely. I mean, even that newscast that they showed where it was like two kids, they grabbed a girl, they brought her to a playground and they stabbed her. And then when they asked the kids why they did what they did, they said it's because they were copying something that they saw on TV. And then they just some sort of way made a connection to Power Rangers to the point where now the actors had to start doing, you know, PSAs, you know, because they held them liable for what their kids are doing. When in reality, those things are an indictment on the failure of the parents.
Yes.
That's really what it is. Because if I'm a good father and if I picked a good mother for my kids, nothing that they see on TV is going to influence them more than we do. So again, that means you failed. And by pointing the finger at the show is just trying to assign blame, like you said. And in reality, so you really got to look at the situation. And because a lot of people, they can't deal with their own failures, they try to put it on, you know, external sources, you know, to hide from the fact that it was, you know, they who failed, which to me is bullshit. And I wish that that they didn't make the actors feel bad, because they're not going to look at Haim Saban. They're not going to look at the producers. They're not going to look at none of the behind the scenes people. They're going to look at the actors and say it's your fault, because they're the ones who are in front of the camera and they're the ones who had to get dragged in front of the camera to do PSAs. And it's like, yo, like Samuel Jackson, you know, said something about that. And he was like, yo, like if you're raised right, you know, you're not going to do shit like that. He was like, stupid people do shit like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And again, like I've watched the most violent shit when I was a kid, you know, and I'm like, I can't really say that my parents raised me right, but it's like I looked up to the right people that I wouldn't do something like that anyway. You know? Exactly.
It's just like because the fact was a lot of parents at the time were very lazy. You know, when a lot of parents were lazy at that time, they didn't sit down and explain to their kids and teach them the right way. They were just like, I'm busy. Just watch that TV show, play that video game. I got stuff to do.
Exactly. You know?
Yeah. And see, that's the problem. And then when something happened, they went, oh my gosh. Well, I you know, it's like, were you sitting with them saying, this is something that is not real, and this is something that is real? Let me explain to you. This is real, this is not. Were you giving the time? A lot of people were not giving the time to their kids, and they were not telling them that this is acceptable behavior and this is not. That's what it got down to. Because and if people try to challenge that, I said, wait, back up. What about the age of cowboys? Let's go back to the 1950s and 60s. Let's go back to the age of cowboys. Lone Ranger, Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, John Wayne, right? All these kids, I've seen the commercials. They all had shotguns and 6-shooters, you know, cap guns, plop, 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 cowboy boots on, cowboy hat, ready to do the quick draw. None of them got killed. And back then, that's when a lot of dads took their kids to the rifle range and let them shoot 22 rifles. Right. So a lot of kids had BB guns and 22 rifles, right? They didn't go around and do that wild stuff back then. And those shows were based off real guns and that whole thing. And a lot of those stories were based on reality. You know, OK Corral, White Earp, those were real people. But you didn't have that generation. And then, you know, early G.I. Joe in the 60s, you know, and you had machine guns and you had actual soldier 12-inch figures. You know, kids didn't go around and mow down people at school and all that back then. So explain to me what happened. Well, the fact was the parents were teaching the kids to be responsible. They taught them to be responsible back then. That's what the difference was.
Right.
They taught them to be responsible, and they were working with the kids. And yes, there are people that are just unstable that exist, whether they watch things or not. You know, they just off instinct, they just do things.
Yeah.
And that's been the problem that we've continuously had, is the blame is to point at other things, but the blame is never, well, where were the parents at? Where were they? Were they teaching them? You know, the Columbine situation, all that. It's like, well, where were the parents at? You know, what was really going on with those kids? And then come to find out those kids were really, really disturbed. They were really, really, really disturbed. So they needed more help than what was given. But the parents just kind of just, well, you know, and then things went south.
Yeah.
That's what it gets down to.
Yeah. So I wanted to also briefly, I guess, because we kind of already discussed it, but Nakia Burrise, who she played not Aisha but Tanya, correct, on Zio. And and this is another thing, like it's just like I don't know why she was there. Because it doesn't it's like I guess it only just showcases how cutthroat the business can be. And she's a black woman, and I did feel for her when she said that, you know, on her last day on Zio. What? Because did she do Zio or did she do Turbo also? No, she did do Turbo.
Did both. Yeah,
she did both. But she was saying that, you know, her last day on set, she was crying because she didn't want to leave. She felt that she had, you know, built a family, you know, on set, and she didn't want to, you know, leave, and, you know, and so on and so forth. And again, having watched it a second time, I'm just like, how does this really kind of tie into the overarching point of what this documentary is supposed to be showing? Because when you compare that to what happened with Ricardo Medina Jr. and the shit that he was doing, it just doesn't match. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's like it's like because they have the psychiatrist guy there who's narrating stuff, and it's just like, it's very incoherent. So they're just kind of stashing whatever it is that they could get based off of the actors that decided to do it. Even the blonde hair girl, I didn't even know who she was because I didn't watch her season of Power Rangers. Because that whole entire time, I'm like, who the hell is this? And come to find out, she did which season was it where JDF comes back? Was that Megaforce?
She was on, I believe she was on Megaforce. Yeah. And to be fair, she did a lot of Bat in the Sun videos with JDF too. She did a couple with him.
Okay. So they actually had a relationship.
Yeah.
Because I was not familiar with, you know, who she was at all. Because I almost took it like they were just stretching whatever interaction she did have with him to make it seem like they were close, or, you know, or something like that. But I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on Nakia's portion of the documentary, if anything, because to me, I just don't really see the point, because what happened to her is essentially what happened to the other actors in the beginning. You know, it was just kind of like they were, you know, they didn't really want to leave, but they had to because they felt like that's what they had to do. I guess just in her case, she didn't have a choice because it was, you're going to get replaced.
Right. Yeah, well, the thing about Nakia was a great Yellow Ranger. She was a good character. She put in the work to actually, she was not a martial artist. She worked with JDF and Johnny Bosch and Steve Cardenas and learned and really put in the work. Same with Catherine. So her and Catherine were learning a lot. So I want to give them credit on that. The thing about it was it was cool she was there to represent the Zeo years and the Turbo years at the beginning, and coming on the show. But there were so many people that were missing to where you get her, and it's great she's there, but she really can't tap into it because nobody's there to play the story with her.
Right.
You know, to get into it, because Catherine's not there. Steve's not there. Johnny's not there. You know, Blake Foster, you know, is not there. Nobody from Mighty Morphin is there. And then the cast that took over for Turbo, you know, Selwyn Ward and Tracy Lynn Cruz and everybody, they're not there either. So you don't have any buffer for her or anybody to collaborate or play off her story. Like, it's just literally her. And it's like, well, where is everybody? Because you don't have anybody there from Mighty Morphin, really. Nobody there from Zeo except for Nakia. Nobody really there from Turbo. Nobody from In Space. You see what I'm saying? Like, nobody's there. You got a select few people that you brought in, but there was not a lot there. So I'm glad she's there, because she's one of my favorite Rangers. I think she's great and seems like a great human being. But there just wasn't a lot for her to work with there. And that's where the show got kind of halved, was like, they should have brought in as many Rangers as they could have that fit that whole story outline.
Exactly.
You know, they should have really, really brought them in, and they did not. And the question is, why didn't they? You know, what was going on? You know, because this was a dead giveaway to bring in all those Rangers, because we've seen other documentaries or short biographies or interviews where they've gone and gotten or had statements from the other Rangers, you know. And I feel that they really needed to do that to tell the story, because Cardenas has a whole nother story about them leaving, you know, Zeo and everything and their departure, you know. And then JDF tells the story about how that happened, you know, because like you have to connect them together. Like, Steve was upset with how things were going, so he wanted to go. You know, JDF was upset because he felt Saban treated them like numbers instead of people. And that's how that argument happened. So it's like, you know what I mean? You need that right there. And they didn't bring any of that to the story. So, you know, I felt bad for Nakia, because I felt like they really could have given her something to really work with, and really showed some really good moments with her. And even when they interview her, they just kind of like skip through things kind of quickly, you know. And, you know, they talked about the death of JDF, and she's the only one there, you know.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, well, what about everybody else?
Everybody
you know?
else. So it's an incomplete thing. It's the same thing I felt with the Once and Always special.
Yes.
You can't do something like that if you don't have everybody. If you don't have everybody, then don't put it in the oven, because you don't have all the ingredients yet. And if you do, when you take it out, it's just not going to hit the way that you want it to hit. It's not going to have the impact. So it's whatever it is that they wanted to do and accomplish with, you know, Dark Side of Power Rangers. This is just a momentary thing. People are not going to be talking about this a year from now. Just like no one's talking about Once and Always. If they had done it when all the Rangers were around and available to do it, people would still be talking about it now. People would still want more now. People will be talking about, all right, when are we going to get another reunion? Because we need some more of this. They didn't do it. So it's a big difference between doing what you need to do and just getting by. And I feel like with this, they just kind of did what they needed to do to just get by. You know what I mean? Like how, like, it's like you could be in class and you could go for an A, or you could just see your way out of class and just go for the bare minimum, which might be a C or a D, whatever it is that you need to do to pass, because all you care about is passing. Because I feel like that's what they needed to do. It's the same thing with Ricardo Medina Jr. Like that was just the narrative that they kind of put in there. Now, granted, for somebody like me, I wasn't ever really a big fan of him. I loved Wild Force, but there wasn't an actor in that show that I was like, oh man, I'm invested in them, where I'm gonna be a fan of them outside of that. You know,
Right.
I didn't have that. And I knew that he had committed some sort of crime, but to what extent I wasn't aware of until I watched it. And I was like,
Right.
oh, wow, okay. That kind of sort of plays into the dark side, quote unquote, of Power Rangers. I guess. And I mean, that had nothing to do with Power Rangers. That had everything to do with just him being a weird dude, a psychopath. Because they're trying to make a correlation by saying, oh, he, you know, impaled the dude with a sword to the point where it had an exit wound on the other side of his body. And they try to say, oh, because he was a Power Ranger, that's why he did that. Because he really thought he was the character. No, he's just a fucking crazy dude. That had nothing to do with Power Rangers. That's what I'm saying. That's why I wish they would stop trying to make it a correlation just because he happened to be on the show. No, it was just, he just had issues that never got sorted out. And then that was the end result. And unfortunately, he got off with, you know, a relatively speaking, a slap on the wrist, because he had the complexion for protection, in my opinion. Because there's no way I could get a sword and stab somebody clean through their body and then get my girl and tell them, oh, it was in self-defense. You're right. It's a wrap. It's a wrap.
Here's the thing. Henry Resilient, actually, and I was on that stream, he actually fleshed out the entire story about what happened with Ricardo. Better than that documentary ever could, actually. And you get the beginning and the end and the conclusion from Henry.
Is there any difference or contradiction?
Oh yeah. Because what you find out is Ricardo is actually not the bad guy in the story, is what you find out.
Expound on that. Yeah. Definitely expound if you can, sum it up in a way where, you know, myself and listeners can, you know.
Right. All right, boys and girls, here we go. Campfire story. So what actually happened was, see, the sister that's on there that's like, oh, you know, we kind of, you know, he was interested in me. We didn't really date. No, they actually dated. They actually did date. And what happened was they stopped dating and he went forward and she did not. She was very upset about that situation, about them dating. Okay. And he did work at the little animal rescue they had for dogs and stuff like that up in the mountains and everything. And he did his thing out there. She brought the brother, and the brother had issues with Ricardo because of the sister, because the sister was mad at him. So the brother was mad, you know, he wasn't liking it. And they told him, you can't bring the girlfriend. See, that's where they messed up on the documentary. It was like, oh, why can't he bring the girlfriend? That's the one thing they did point out that everybody should catch on to, was like, why can't he bring his girlfriend up here? If he's dating her, like, why do you guys have an issue? Because he used to date the sister. The sister didn't like that. The sister didn't want that. So she told the brother, she's never to come on the property, you know, kick her out, you know, she can't be there. What ended up happening was the brother was actually really a violent, unstable guy, right? And they did have a little bit of an altercation. They did get into some fights and some spats. And the thing about it was the brother did bust in the room, whether if he kicked it open, whether if the door was unlocked, whatever. He came in the room, because the thing about it, in the actual police recordings of the interrogation, he does not say, oh, well, he exactly kicked open the door. He just said he just came through the door. Okay. So when she tried to use like, oh, I'm going to use that, like he bust through the door, it's like, no, he just said he came through the door. And he was coming in the room. Ricardo and his girlfriend were in there, and he already threatened to do things to Ricardo and the girlfriend. So when he came in the room, Ricardo, he grabbed what he needed to stop this guy, because, you know, he was like, he was bigger than me, he was stronger than me. You know, he's like, I was not a martial artist. I was a guy that was trained in their training camp for stunts to do some martial art like things for the show. So he was just trained in stunts to make it look a certain way. So, you know, he had the sword there at his house. You know, I was like, who put swords on the wall? Everybody I knew in the 90s had swords on their wall. I had them too. You know, it's just a cool thing to do. You know, we liked weapons, we posted them up. You know, that was it. So he ended up stabbing the guy to stop him, but not with the intent to kill him, just to stop the guy. And the sword went through. The reason why the guy, they were talking about, his hands were cut up and everything, because it was revealed that and this is actual recording of the interrogation, the guy pulled the sword out. And when he did, he cut his hands. That's what happened. He pulled the sword out. And Ricardo actually tried to save the guy. He actually tried to save the guy and did not know he was dead until he was being interrogated, and they revealed to him that he died. And you get his reaction in the recording, which he's very upset about, because he was hoping that he would survive, even though, they didn't get along, but he didn't want to kill the guy. Now, part two to that is the sister, who was still upset, she went on Soft White Underbelly. Everybody go to Soft White Underbelly and check her out, because what she did on that interview was, she said, I wanted to get Ricardo so bad that I slept with the whole sheriff's department. Every officer that I could get to, I slept, did whatever, sacrificed my body, whatever, to get him convicted.
Wow.
And what it pointed to was that she was upset about that situation because Ricardo stopped dating her. And of course, she's upset about her brother to a point, because, she thought her brother would handle Ricardo, and it didn't go down that way. Ricardo defended himself, and unfortunately, guy got killed in the altercation. And she wanted to make sure that he went to jail to show him and make him pay for dating that other girl. And you could put the brother with that. And that's what happened. In Soft White Underbelly, she laid it all down. She talked about how she had sexual encounters with all these sheriffs that were working at the department to change the minds of detectives. She was down there all the time doing favors. Oh, yeah. See, that's the thing that got me mad about the documentary. I said, why didn't you guys play that Soft White Underbelly that's free for everybody to look at on YouTube?
Mm-hmm.
See, they didn't put that in there. They had her show up, but they didn't put that in there. And you had the psychologist going, oh my gosh, and all this. I'm like, did you go listen to all the police reports? Because you only played a little section. Did you play the whole thing? Because Henry played the whole thing. That's how you get that whole story. And he played Soft White Underbelly too. So she put a guy in jail that defended himself. Yeah.
Well, you see, and that's my issue when you do a documentary like that and you don't have everybody involved to speak whatever their story is.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why I'm like, because it leaves people like me. Because again, I didn't know Ricardo Medina Jr. from Assault. I only know him from Wild Force. That's as far as I know the guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't even know what he looked like today. So it's like when I saw those, newer pictures of his, I was like, oh, and then it made me look at his Instagram to see if he was active on there. So and again, like, that's why I feel like, again, like, no one's going to be talking about this documentary a year from now because it's not definitive. Because you need somebody like him, at least, regardless of who, believes who, at least let all parties involved defend themselves. Because when you don't have that and you only have one person there, it's not fair. Because it's not like Ricardo's still in jail right now. So they definitely could have reached out to him. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure if had he known, like, they're gonna paint me out as a psychopath and a criminal and a murderer, I'm at least gonna, come on there so that way I could say my side of the story. Because it should be unbiased. But again, they're trying to make the documentary seem like when you're a Power Ranger, or I guess if you're the Red Ranger or some shit, there's something wrong with you. There was something wrong with you mentally, or the show, or working on the show destroyed your mental health to the point where, it led you to lead a certain lifestyle or to do certain things, later on in life, post Power Rangers. And that I don't like, because to me, again, it wasn't a dark show at all. In fact, like I said, like, for a kid who's looking for somebody to look up to, there's a lot of characters you could look up to in different seasons of Power Rangers if you need a role model. That's a good show, as a matter of fact. You know, I mean, if
Absolutely.
you have parents enough that can teach you that there's a difference between reality and fiction. But I feel like, yeah, life imitates, well, no. So art imitates life, but sometimes, you know, life can imitate art sometimes. And I feel like Power
Absolutely.
Rangers, yeah, like a character like Tommy Oliver is not a bad character to aspire to. Not at all. You know what I'm
No,
saying? Because that's a great character that stood for a lot of stuff. And again, like, yeah, I pulled from Tommy Oliver even to this day. You know, I've said that so many times before. But to move on, even with Pua, and I'm not even gonna try to, you know, pronounce his last name, but that was very sad.
yeah.
That was very sad. And they
Yeah.
kind of glossed over that. That one, I feel like that was one of the little backstories that they just like really, you know, glossed over. And I don't even think they had anybody that knew him personally to speak on that.
Yeah.
Because I had known that he passed away, but I didn't know that it was, you know, because he did what he did, you know, to try to keep it, you know, sensitive.
Yeah.
But well, what do you make of that situation? Because I, again, like, outside of Ninja Storm, I didn't follow him. The only actor that I followed after, you know, the only actor that I followed was Jason David Frank. But if you do have any thoughts or feelings about what happened to Pua, or if you know like any specifics, kind of like you did with Ricardo, you know, what were they?
You know, I don't know a whole lot about Pua, but I do know that there were problems at home. You know, from what I do know is that he and his wife were not compatible. They were just volatile people, like, together.
Wow.
Like, it just wasn't working. You know, if they had been with other people, maybe, you know, I think things would have been different. But those two together, the mix was just not good. And that's what led to, you know, Pua doing what he did, you know. And, you know, yeah, they were both just violent with each other, you know. And, you know, Pua, like, you know, most guys, you know, being in a marriage relationship with somebody that you just don't mix with, you know, and then feeling like you still have to be in it and be there, you know, either you stay in it and you're miserable, you guys are whooping each other's behinds all the time is the other option,
Wow.
or after a while, you know, he's just like, we'll just end it all, you know, because there's no way out for me. And that's what I think really
Wow.
happened to Pua, you know, was that
Mm-hmm.
he just said, just end it all. And that's really the story about him. And you're correct, like, they could have had some of the Rangers from the show with him, or people that
Mm-hmm.
really knew him to say, hey, this is what I knew, you know, and
Right.
be able to explain that and talk in depth to a point about it. They could have done that. But again, they kind of cut it at the knees, you know, like they did, you know, even for people they did bring, you know, a lot of it was kind of pieced, you know, like
Yeah.
they said a little piece here and a little piece there, and then they were on to the next thing. And that's what made the thing, I think, the strongest thing out of it, unfortunately, was the JDF stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even him and his brother,
Yes.
that that really bothered me.
Mhm.
What happened with Erik, because he was an aspiring actor, and I get that. Um, and one thing that I've learned over the almost 10 years of me actively pursuing a career as an actor, and I wouldn't even say pursuing because I do it.
Right.
Um, what I tell people, or someone or a subscriber asked me while I was on Twitch a few weeks ago, and he's not even from America, he's from the UK somewhere. And he asked me, like, what advice would I give someone who wants to be an actor? Or like, what advice would I give him specifically? And the only advice I can give him, the only realistic advice that I could give him was make sure that's what you love to do, because you're going to go through shit
Yes.
doing it. If that's what you actually want to do with your life, I said, make sure you love it, because you're going to have your fair share of struggles whilst pursuing it. And I feel like with Erik, with all due respect, I think he wanted to be an actor because that's what he saw his brother doing.
Mhm.
And when he wasn't getting that same sort of success, or it didn't pan out the same way, it dealt a blow to his confidence a little bit. And again, his wife said that, you know, it had to
Yeah.
do with him making comparisons in his head to his younger brother. And of course, it's like, yo, my younger brother basically, he's Super Saiyan me. You know what I'm saying? That's what one of my uncles, would say. It's like, yo, you got Super Saiyan. It's like, JDF was Goku and he was Vegeta. And you know how Goku and Vegeta, they had their thing, mostly because Vegeta was always comparing himself to Goku.
True.
It didn't have to go down like that if you had a genuine love for the craft. Because yeah. I asked myself that question. I'm like, well, like, it's not like, oh, I want to be an actor someday. It's like, no, be an actor. There's plenty of opportunities to act, whether you're doing a local play, you're going to do a reading, a student film, an independent film. Like, you can do the thing. Yeah, of course, everybody, if they could make, a substantial amount of money doing what they love to do, fine. But that's a byproduct. It's like, fall in love with what it means to be an actor. And if you happen to make money in the process, awesome. But if you don't, that's okay. And I think he just didn't have anybody to break that down to him, because I feel like a lot of actors that I've met, they get caught up in the industry shit of being an actor. It's like I mean, I was on the phone with someone, she's a girl, and she told me that she hadn't done a play in over 5 years. But you love acting, right? So how can that much time go by without you actually doing the thing? You know what I mean? Right. And she went to a conservatory that Jonathan Majors went to just because she liked Jonathan Majors. So because he went there, she went there, and she had a bad experience, which put a bad taste in her mouth. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. I mean, let's be honest with you. I'm not going to go somewhere just because, my favorite actor went there. That was their experience. I can't, you know what I'm saying? When you make comparisons to yourself and someone else and their journey, it's like the enemy of joy, or comparison is the enemy of joy. Absolutely. Because I can't say, okay, I'll look at this actor and say, wow, he's over here and I'm over here. His journey and his path is different than mine. Yeah. I can't focus on what somebody else is doing. Yeah, you could look at someone and use them as a motivation to make you walk faster in your path, because my life is my life and his life is his life. And I look at him, and let's say the episodes that he did on Zio and that picture that they showed of him in the White Ranger costume, it's like, cool, bro, but that's JDF, man. That's him. Yeah. Like, you can't, that's him. Like, yeah, cool. That's his path, but it wasn't for you to walk down, because she said, yeah, like he did the 5 episodes on Zio. He thought that it was going to equate into him being a Ranger. And for some reason, I don't know why she said that, that he thought it was going to be the White Ranger. I think she had that mistaken. I think she meant maybe the Gold Ranger, because I don't know if Jason came back or Austin came back at that point. When they were doing the Arrowhead episodes and, he was going along, that journey. I don't know if Austin came back. He wasn't back yet.
No, because he was, what JDF explained was they brought in Austin because they couldn't use Erik, because Erik got sent to the peace conference, as JDF used to say, because he had asked for too much. He had asked for money and he had asked for certain things. And Jason told him,
see that?
Jason told him,
see that?
He said, listen, he told him, he said, listen, don't ask for this, don't ask for that, and don't do this. If you want to do this show, like, if you don't care, whatever, but if you want to do this show and you want things to go, here's what you got to look out for. And Jason told that to everybody. He told that to Steve Cardenas when he came on the show. He said, if you do this, you'll be here. If you do this, you won't be here. So don't do this. He told him, don't show up to set late. Steve showed up late all the time. And he was like, why are you showing up late, dude? I told you, like, don't do that. Like, they get mad. He's like, I don't care. He's like, that was Steve's attitude. Like, he didn't want to be there, entirely. Like, he was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, I got it. But then he started doing the show. I don't really want to do this. So he didn't really care. And JDF would tell everybody, he's like, Johnny listened. That's why when Johnny left, you saw him on rewinds and he came back to Saban and he did stuff. He's in space because Johnny listened, and Johnny did right by his time there. Right. He listened. You see, that's the thing. JDF was the guy and the voice of reason that would come to you and be like, okay, now that you're on the show, here's what you need to know. Watch out for this. Don't do this.
Because
Don't
he's the
ask for that.
OG.
Don't do that.
Yeah,
He
because
was
he's the
it.
OG, and
He
you gotta listen to people like that in your ear. But just to kind of segue back to Erik, he wasn't doing the show for the right reasons.
No,
because if your brother told you, yo, this is how it is if you want this job, and I understand when you're living a full adult lifestyle, you got kids, you got a wife, you got bills. I get that. But it's like, if this is what you truly love to do, you might not do it for free, but doing what you love to do for any sort of money and exposure on top of that, which will give you more longevity, motherfucker, you take it. It. Because like I say about The Last Dragon all the time, when you're worried about the money, dog, you don't know if you're going to get that same opportunity again. Absolutely. And you have to assume that, yo, I might not get the same opportunity, so let me strike oil or some shit like that while the pot is hot, because I might not get that opportunity again. And especially because it's like back in that time, and I'm talking about, like the 90s, 2000s. I think there are some pros and cons to being an actor versus what it's like now. Okay, it's like now, or at least back then, they were actively looking for talent. Like, I'm talking about like talent agents, have boots on the ground looking for people, because the internet wasn't what it is now.
True.
Where now you have actors who are actively submitting to agencies online. You could just put yourself in front of an agent online. You just go, if they take submissions, you can send it to them, and then boom. If you can get in front of one, if they believe in you, they'll rock out.
Yeah.
But the thing is, now an actor comes a dime a dozen. So it's not, the competition is a lot higher versus when he was doing it. Not everybody gets the same opportunities that he gets. And he had a good look. You look like your brother. Like, just imagine if, like, yo, he was the Gold Ranger with JDF. Think about it. They probably wouldn't even have had a need to go and get, Austin St. John if they had him.
Yeah.
And it would have worked.
Austin. Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, it would have worked.
Yeah.
Think about it. Like, he had the look, all of that. Then you could have made that into an opportunity to do maybe a later season down the line.
Yeah.
But because you want, and again, trust me, I get it. Where it's like, yo, you got bills, dog. And I was even saying, to my friend, that I was telling you about yesterday, is that when you got situations, people don't know what type of situation you're in. Yeah. So when someone's looking at it, like, they're looking at the logistics first, and they're saying, okay, if I'm making this much money, then it'll make it easier for me to take care of my family. I get that. But as an actor, because you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you're not, working for a 9-to-5 or a corporate office where you can have those conversations and say, listen, I want this amount of money. A 9-to-5 will be able to work with you. But in acting, entertainment, no, they're not. They're not. It's like, yo, they're going to pay you $1,000. That's what they're going to pay you. That's what you're going to have to deal with. At least you're making something. Because I don't know what Erik did after he left the show. I don't know. Because I think he was trying to, get headshots, and I think maybe he worked at the, martial arts school with JDF. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure taking the show while your brother was there would have been a lot easier than you not taking it at all. Because at least your brother is there to be with you.
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying? That was just my attitude on that.
Right. JDF talked about it. He said that, when he did the show, he said Erik was saying, like, hey, like, I could do, I could do that acting stuff. Like, oh, man, I kill it. I'll be the man, like, and JDF was like, it's not as easy as you think. And it's not what you might think it will be. And he kept telling him that. And he was like, and so he said, all right. So they got on the show, and, he did his acting. And that's when he said, I have a brother, and it's his line. And he's like, they already cut. He's like, man, why'd you say it like that? He's like, I don't know. He's like, I thought you said you had this acting thing down. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, it's not as easy as you thought it was. He's like, and he was like, on the Zeo episode where they did the snow thing where Sarah Brown was there and all that, and they put him and Catherine together, that stupid whole plot. He said that on that, like, his brother took like one of the snow skis and was like riding around and getting lost, and JDF was like, he went with him, thinking like, okay, well, I'll go with you to keep an eye on him. But he kept taking him further and further. They ended up getting lost, and they were late for taping because of Erik. Wow. So Erik was messing up on set, and he was asking, more money, and he was doing all these little goofy things and getting lost. And, he also lived with David Yost because he needed a place to stay. So David Yost opened up his house to him, and David Yost also lent his car to him.
To Erik?
Yes.
Well, wait. But all right. So let me get some clarity. But why would why would David be doing this for Erik if JDF is there? So why wouldn't JDF do that for him?
Because
that's his brother.
There were times like when, JDF would be taping long hours, doing other stuff, and he couldn't be with Erik all the time. Okay. So, if he needed to go somewhere, Yost gave him his car. Yost gave him a place to stay to be closer when they were filming, stuff like that. And he, if I remember correctly, I think he did something to David Yost's car.
Wow.
So he was messing up left and right, big time. And JDF was trying to work it out for him. And he kept telling him, you're going to end up at that peace conference, if you're not careful, and he told him, like, don't do it. Like, stick right here, and, he had a thing for Catherine too, right? You know that, right?
Oh, like he liked her.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He liked her.
So, and he had a wife, bro. Like,
yeah. So I think that there may have been some little bit of infidelity going on between possibly or wanted infidelity between the two of them. Was the other thing. So, because that's why like people are like, oh yeah, you and Kat. He was like, my character was not interested in Kat. My character was interested in Kimberly, so it didn't make sense. He's like, but my brother, he was like, oh, he loved Catherine. He was like,
right.
Put those two together. Yeah, it was like, yeah, they could have. See, that was the thing. It was like they could have really built on that, but Erik had his mind made up, and Erik messed up, and he ended up getting taken off the show. And the Gold Ranger part went to Austin. That's why they gave Austin the cookies, the skies, the everything, because they had to pull him in at the last minute because they had already been taping with who?
Yeah.
See, they had been getting that ready. So that was the thing about it. They had been getting him ready to do that. Now they had to throw him in at the last minute.
Yeah, I will just say I don't fault Erik 100% because we're all human, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know how old he was at that time, but we have to kind of show grace in the sense that we all make mistakes, we all do dumb shit. There have been times in my life where people have told me things and I didn't listen, and then I had to bump my head in order to understand what they were trying to tell me. I just feel like it didn't have to result in him doing what he chose to do, at the end of it all. I think, again, if acting is what you truly love to do, he wouldn't have done that. But that wasn't what he loved to do. It just seemed like an easy thing to do, not realizing that it's a craft. Trust me, right. I know it's a fucking craft, because again, like you could have natural talent, sure, but what will allow you to really shine in front of a camera or on stage is experience, is skill. And that's why, like I said, he's like, I have a brother. It didn't work because that's not acting, dog. Like, you're trying, but that's not actually acting, because you can get in front of a camera and freeze up and tense up and be stiff because you don't have skill.
Yeah.
You don't have experience. And, I mean, like I said, that's just what happens when you look at somebody else's plate and then you think like, oh, what works for them is going to work for me. No, it just worked for JDF because it just worked for him. That wasn't your path. You have to really realize, like, because I look at my life and I look at my path and I realize, like, yeah, the reason why it's for me is because when I'm on stage, I feel like that's where I belong. Mm-hmm. When I'm in a theater, that's where I've met the people that have shown me the most love, that have shown me the most respect, that have seen me, that have valued me for who I truly am and not who they wanted me to be. Like, let's say people like the family that I was born into. You know what I'm saying? that's where I've just gotten the most, how should I say, payoff. And that doesn't equate to dollars. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about dollars when I say I've gotten paid off from being an actor. And that wouldn't make sense to somebody who's doing it for the bread. So if I'm saying like, yo, all right, because even like Chadwick Boseman will say, and I have a video where I use a lot of different sound bites that inspired me, that he said, and he was saying that, you know, your humble beginnings is, yo, you're going to have to do something for free. You're going to have to do a reading that's only going to pay you $50, maybe $100, at best $150, maybe $200. You know, and that's not a lot of money, especially in this day and age. You can't do anything with $200. You go grocery shopping, yo, all of it is pretty much gone at that point. That's what comes with that's what comes with doing this shit.
That's the thing.
And I don't think, you know, Erik really ever understood that. And he seemed like a nice guy, but you know, if you don't have someone in your corner that's going to give you that disclaimer before you decide to walk down that road, you know, you're gonna hit a wall. And he hit a wall.
He did, and JDF tried to stop it. You know, JDF really tried to stop it and really tried to, you know, guide him in the right way. But Erik made his own decision on that one, and unfortunately, you know, it didn't go well. But you know, he was trying to walk in Jason's shadow, you know, like, oh, okay, my brother, I can do it too. Yeah, you know, and he did it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And it's like,
don't work like that.
It unfortunately it took him down a path because he was, like his wife said, you know, he was trying to be too much like him, you know, instead of just like, you know, okay, I want to be here. I want to learn how to act. I want to, you know, I have a passion for this. I'll make this work, and you know, I'll do whatever I got to do, you know, to make it work. You know, he's just like, nah, I'm just gonna show up and do my thing, and they're just gonna think I'm great. Yeah, that's what he would say. Yeah. That's what JDF said. That's what he said. Yeah,
because the thing is, it's like the question I'll ask him is like, well, does it feel natural?
Yeah,
when you're acting, when they cut the camera on and they say, okay, action, do you feel natural doing it? Because it's one thing to have nerves. Like even Clifton Powell says that. It's like, you know, the nerves are never going to go away. But do you feel natural doing it? Like, is this genuinely what you want to do? Because like if you have kids and career starts to, or college, higher education and career starts to become a conversation, the only question you ask them is, what do you love to do? Cool. Figure out a way to monetize that, take it serious, go full force at that. And yeah, trial and error is a thing too. Like, all right, you might want to try something. Yeah, try it. There's nothing wrong with trying. It's like he tried it. But clearly, if showing up to set on time is an issue, or getting in front of the camera and actually giving your lines the way you're supposed to, and actually doing the damn thing is a problem, then maybe it's not for you, dog. Or maybe not as a profession. You know what I'm saying? That's like a lot of people that say they want to get into boxing. Cool. Until you actually have to go through a workout and then they see how taxing it is on the body. A lot of people that I train with, friends and stuff, that act like they want to get into boxing, they never did it again.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, damn, you know what? Yeah, for what I have to put into it is probably not really worth it. Because you gotta love it. Otherwise, yeah, who wants to get punched in the face for nothing? It's like I've got my ass whooped plenty of times. But what actually got me through those ass whoopings is because I actually love boxing. You know what I mean? I'm not just doing this shit, you know, just to get on camera and to show myself punching and shit like that. Like I rarely ever do that because it's not for that. I do it because I get a payoff from it. It's because it's natural. And for him, yo, it just wasn't a thing. And honestly, I feel like he definitely should, you know, be here today. I think all people like that really need is like mentors, you know, OGs. Because sometimes it's not the message, it's the messenger. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, yeah, somebody can tell you some shit, but if you don't respect them or if you don't really like them like that, then it's not really going to mean anything. But when it's someone that you really do hold in high regard and they say the same thing to you, it's probably going to hit. I just don't think he really had somebody that he could really listen to like that, because at the end of the day, JDF was his younger brother. So JDF could have been trying to guide him, but that's my younger brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, I should be the one telling him, you know, what to do, not the other way around. And I feel like that's probably why JDF was telling him, yo, this, and that. And it never really registered because he's the younger brother. It was the right message from the wrong messenger type shit. Maybe if Haim Saban, I don't know, sat him down and maybe told him, like, yo, listen, this is what you got to do, because of how successful he was. And because Erik was looking at acting from a materialistic standpoint of what he wanted to reap from it, he probably would have listened to him. He's like, okay, if he's a billionaire and I want to be rich too, then maybe I should listen to him.
Absolutely. That's the sad part about Erik was like, you know, so much he could have done, so many things he could have worked with his brother on, you know, but
Right.
he didn't listen.
Yeah.
And he was older than JDF, you know, so it's like, you know, at the time when JDF was probably 20, 24, let's say, 24, 25. So Erik,
Right.
let me see, when my guess would probably be he's probably about 27, 28, something like that, you know, and it's like the younger one figured it out, the older one did, you know, and it's like, dude, you know, if you really want to be here, you'll figure it out. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
If you really want to be here, you'll figure it out. If you come this far along, you'll figure it out. You're already on the show. So if you really want to be here, you'll figure out how to stay, because that's what JDF had. When he came on the show, he helped with stunts. He passed out snacks. You know, he just stayed on set, learning, getting to know people, building himself up. You see, that's what he did. Outside of his martial art accolades, he was able to do other things and, you know, work behind the camera before they put him on, you know, the show, and still helped, you know, and then helped out other people, you know, like that's what he did. So he put in the work and the time and made it go more than anybody else on that set and in the history of Power Rangers. See, that was the thing. You know, all the rest of them, you know, whew, I'm tired, I'm going home. JDF would say, like, all right, let me help with this.
That's that passion. That's
Yeah.
that passion. When you're passionate about your work, you're not, it's not going to bother you to take extra hours to do what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? But
Right.
Lastly, because we already know what happened as far as, you know, JDF is concerned, you know what I'm saying? And we've talked about that in great detail. But I think what really kind of bothered me was the very stark difference between the way that Erik Frank's wife spoke about him and then the way that Tammie Frank spoke about JDF. And I feel like, again, no amount of bashing this woman is going to bring JDF back. And I don't want it to be about bashing her, so to speak, but I just want to kind of highlight how she had a certain like stoicness, if that's even a word, to the way that she would talk about their relationship. And it was just like, just glossing it over. She was like, yeah, you know, I loved him so much. And, you know, we fell in love. And I was like, yo, you sound like AI. You know what I'm saying? Like, you sound like I could just go on Google Translate and just translate it in English. We fell in love. I made him food and I did everything for him. And you know what really pissed me off, bro? When she said that she filed for divorce to get his fucking attention.
Yeah.
That's what really bothered me. Because I was like, what? And just like how you were saying that, you know, Ricardo wasn't there to speak his side of the story. Like, I wanted so bad for JDF to be there so they could ask him, like, yo, is this shit true? Is that shit true?
Yeah.
She did that shit just like, that's so blasphemous. Like, I filed for fucking divorce to get this guy's attention. Yeah. Really, motherfucker? What?
You served him at a convention.
At a fucking convention.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to get his attention? That's some bullshit. That, like, yo, honestly, that was some bullshit. I'm like, yo, like, the people behind the camera, like, you're really gonna buy that? Like, seriously? And again, like, there wasn't and again, I'm a Cancer, you know what I'm saying? I like astrology, and I'm like all about emotions. And I have like antennas when it comes to emotions and like what somebody's discussing and whether or not like how they feel. It's like I could kind of just feel how someone else is, how someone else feels, just based off of their, you know, body language, their eyes, you know, their tone of voice. She literally didn't have an ounce of emotion in anything she said about that man whatsoever. And she literally just tried to paint it like she had no idea what was going on. She was just totally blindsided by, you know, what ended up happening with him, and that she was the perfect wife. She did everything that she was supposed to do, and that everything throughout everything that she did, it wasn't enough for him, and how he was cheating on her. He was doing all types of like, I'm just like, yo, Like, she's so full of shit. But I just wanted to get your reaction to that, because basically that was mine in a nutshell.
Okay, so Tammie's interesting because, I'm not saying JDF was a perfect man, but here's the thing about Tammie. Tammie, I think, wanted a lot of things. Okay. I think she wanted a lot of things, and it had to be kind of Tammie's way. Okay. And I think Tammie had a lot of ideas, and she had a lot of what she thought was vision for JDF. And I think the reason why he might have had done some of the stuff that he did was because she may not have supported him in the right way. I think that Jason was such a go-getter, and he just did everything and made everything work, pop, and happen, that she felt that, oh, he's got this. But reality was Jason was hurting. He was going through a lot of things. And I felt like Tammie had a one-way of thinking, just because he was able to do all this stuff, that he was good. It's like, if you're great at your job and you've got all the accolades you need, people think you're complete. But if you're not happy with yourself and you're not confident with yourself, none of that stuff means anything.
Exactly.
And I think that she just thought that, okay, yeah, we got this. We're good. Because after he died, how are they doing? How is she doing? She's a mess. Last time I saw her, things aren't going well. She's trying to do the Jason David Frank Foundation and all this stuff. And from what everybody told me, it was not going good. And she charged way too much money, like at Morphicon when they did it this year or last year. They said that she charged way too much money for a glorified tour that you walked around in the convention center to see, some of Jason's stuff.
Right.
She charged way too much. And honestly, after Morphicon, I've never heard of it come up again. Like, I think that there's some problems. And I think the big magic about all this was Jason. Jason knew how to make things work. Jason knew how to always put things together. Because you have to look, like, not just that situation, the school, Rising Sun, he knew how to run it. He knew how to hold it down. Once he wasn't there, I don't think they're holding it down too good, from what I understand. So I think she low-key got used to, like, things being done and handled. And once he wasn't there, she wasn't able to hold it down, which says a lot about her, that she did not know how to do things. Because there was a difference between her and Jason. When Jason was doing conventions and Tammie was at all the conventions, she would be like, there's video where she would be like, hey, everybody, get your money out, get everything paid. Make sure you guys come over here, pay your money, do all that sort of stuff. She got on the microphone and do that. When you're around JDF, and I've been around him, JDF, you get in line, you come over, you tell what you want, and you hang out with him, and he kind of dictates what he wants to do. And what I mean is, if he's going to sign an autograph for you for free, he just does it. What I'm saying is, when Tammie was there, I don't think she allowed that. That's what I'm saying. You see, there's a difference between the two of them and how they moved. Jason really believed in people. Jason really cared for people. Yes, he had things going on, the demons or whatever you want to call them. He had a lot of that going on, for sure. But besides that, Jason cared for people, and was willing to set aside to make somebody's day, to help somebody out, to really go beyond and above. Tammie, on the other hand, you see what I'm saying? Her mind was money. Her mind was focused on things of that nature. Okay. And her life, in my opinion, was not as blessed because of how she moved. And Jason's life was always blessed in a big way because of how he moved. And you put those two together, not a good mix, because there's going to be conflict. You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
There's going to be conflict because he's going to go, I'm going to do a free signing on Saturday. And she's going to go, no, you better charge everybody in there. And no, I believe in putting down the work and the rest will take care of itself. Well, I believe in getting the money first and the rest will take care of itself. You see the conflict there?
Exactly.
So there was conflict, and I'm not going to condone what he did, but if he did have affairs with other women, I'm not saying it's right, but it would make sense that he didn't feel that he could connect with her at a level. You know what I mean? Like there was something missing from her because her heart was not in the right place. She might have given him this and rubbed the back and done all that stuff, but her soul was not where it needed to be.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah, that's the thing about her.
See that. Yeah, I mean, because she looks like the type of woman that, like, talking to her is like, or trying to get emotions out of her is like trying to get emotions from a brick wall. Like
there's
like,
something very off about her.
Yeah, and I honestly feel like when I don't want to call her a liar or anything like that, but I just feel like she just has like the energy of someone who's like capping, who's lying and telling people what she thinks that we want to hear and just trying to paint a picture that like y'all didn't have any problems. And then the problems that you are, being vocal about makes him look bad.
Yeah.
As if you didn't have a part to play in whatever issues that y'all were, that you guys had going on. Because in a marriage, in any relationship, it takes two to tango.
That's right.
It's like we didn't just get, It's like if I got a problem with a girl and, we talking about it, it's like, okay, cool. So how do we get here? That's the question that we have to ask. Okay, cool. So we both have a problem. All right. So then let's talk about what happened that got us to this point right now where we're having this discussion.
Right.
Because it wasn't all just him. You know what I mean? And
that's right.
And I remember, years ago, after his passing, and which is pretty much how we met, which was the video that I dropped, and I was just in my car and I was talking about, everything. And one thing that I did say without having any sort of context was just that he was somebody that was pouring into so many different people.
Yes.
And who was pouring into him at that point?
That's right.
You're just going and going and going and going and going, and you're not taking, a substantial amount of time just to rest and recuperate and just recalibrate your mind. And I was saying to somebody over the phone where I was like, how ambition is like a double-edged sword in a way, because when you're somebody who is ambitious, it's like you feel guilty in shit, even taking a nap or taking a break, or if you have a day off or you take a few days off where you're not doing anything, you feel like you're loafing and you're getting behind. And I'm even like that now in my life, where it's just like, yeah, I can nap, but I feel like I shouldn't be doing that because there are so many things that I know I could and should be doing. And I was even telling my granddad that, like, I feel like being in the position where you feel like you're doing all that you can, but that you're not doing enough at the same time, that's a very unhealthy spot to be in. And again, I'm speaking from experience because I feel like that right now. And for somebody like him, where it's like, all right, if I'm not going to conventions, then like it's not going to be good. So I have to keep going, have to keep going. And you have personal issues that you have going on and you never address it. Because even with the Instagram live that they showed, and I remember being on Instagram and him going live all the time. Now I wouldn't watch, all of them. Sometimes I would kind of watch for a few minutes and then, kind of pop out. But it's like when you're in a position, and that's maybe the one thing that I do agree with that psychiatrist guy, where he said that people who are depressed, they have a certain way of talking about certain things. And then when you have someone else who they have like an attitude, a negative attitude about their life, and I don't know if ideating is the right verb, but a certain ideation that they're having, their terminology is going to be completely different than someone who is just merely dealing with depression. And him saying all of those things that he was saying, and I'm like, damn, yo, like that's really a cry for help. Those Instagram lives where he's talking about fighting demons, and when you're a chosen one, you're gonna have to be saddled with a certain type of adversity that other people aren't gonna understand. And I'm like, yo, I get that, man. And I'm like, when you're someone like him, you're gonna question everybody around you, even if they are your friend, because you're a person of interest and you're wealthy. I mean, I don't know what his financial status was, but I'm pretty sure he was successful. Yes, and even if somebody does want to talk to you about your problems, you're going to question like the sincerity of their interest in your problems in a way. And a lot of your relationships are going to be based off of, industry stuff. And I'm quoting a content creator that I like, where he said that, your mind is going to start to, because he was talking about Etika, who was the streamer who unfortunately, kind of decided to, end things, for himself. And he was saying that your mind is going to start to think things, and you're going to get to a space where you're going to feel like people only appreciate you as an entertainer. And that's a fact. Like, think about it. And even me, I've thought about that sometimes where I'm like, yo, like, if I felt like I wasn't getting at a certain time, but just, if I'm not getting a certain type of love that I want, and I only get it when I'm on YouTube or when I'm dancing or when I'm on stage in the theater, but when I'm not doing those things, it's like, where is all that love? You know what I'm saying? And if you're not someone who is forward thinking in a sense that, okay, I might not like where I am right now, but where I am right now is not where I'm going to be, or I don't have to stay here. I can keep moving forward. I don't have to give up on myself. Then like you can kind of get out of that rut if you're going to be someone that's going to look for the light, when you're stuck in a dark place. But I feel like for JDF, it's like, I feel like maybe he probably thought like, yo, yeah, people only appreciate me as Tammie. People don't know, JDF. And to know JDF, it's like, yo, to know that, yo, my family, we didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a good relationship with, my family like that. My brother's not here. You know what I'm saying? My son, my kids, I don't have good relationships with them. People don't know like the situations. And that's what I was saying to my boy. I was like, yo, like people only see like the front facing you, but can people actually accept you for the side of you that is not so pretty? Because the vision and the image of Tommy Oliver is, he had his flaws, right? But being the evil Green Ranger aside, that was the only flaw that he had, and we saw him overcome that. And then everything else after that might have been minor flaws. But he was really a character that, in reality, you can't live up to that. You can't live up to that. And you're the guy that you portray that character, and everybody expects you to be like that. Yeah. And even at a 9 to 5, it's like, yo, you could be going through things in real life, but they expect you to be smiling when you show up there, and then for everything to be all good. Until like something happens, and then they're like, damn, yo, he must have really been going through things. That's how it was. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, yo, instead of the conventions being like signing autographs and shit, it should have just been like, yo, him just talking with the fans. Like, yo, like, this is what I'm going through right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he needed. And I've been saying this for years. And I feel like I've finally now come to a point where I can talk about him and I'm not on the verge of tears. Because you remember, if you remember when we talked about, Tammie Frank and the whole thing with Sky and all of that stuff. Yeah, I cried in the beginning of that quick take with you and Randy. I cried because I still wasn't at that point where I could talk about him and not get emotional. But it's just like now I talk about him from the aspect of being a full-fledged adult, and that like, yo, you can't feel bad for just stopping to tend to your mental health. Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, and one thing that Will Smith's therapist said about him, and it's true, she was saying that Will is the type of person that he knows that he can't compromise his mental health because, and quote, what she said is that you don't get too many chances, second chances on mental health. Because sometimes once you're fucked, that's it. depending on what your situation is. But you know, I don't want to keep going. I want to get your thoughts on that before we wrap up.
No, you know, you never got a chance to meet JDF, and I actually did. I got to meet him twice. And the last time I saw him was in late August. And he died in November. So I saw him 2-3 months before this all went down. Jason was tired. He was worn. He didn't look like himself. Very grateful, very gracious, but you could tell a lot on his mind because I talked with him for a good while, you know, and the guy paused on me while we were talking. And he paused and I said, yeah, I said, and he looked at me and he was like, well, you know how it is, kind of like that, you know. And I went, huh, in my time of doing things, when somebody pauses like that, there's something they're trying to tell you. There's something going on. You see? You don't stop in a conversation and go, well, yeah, you know, you're brushing off something and you're pausing. And the reason I say that is because there was the last interview Jason did, and it was at a convention, and a guy told him, I want to talk to you about suicide and mental health awareness. Jason got with this guy later on in the day, went into a room at the convention center, took a tablet and sat with this guy and talked to him about all that stuff. Okay. What he was willing to share. And it told me right there, Drew, he was having that moment with you. That's why there was that pause. That's why there was that connection. That's why it wasn't just, let me sign your autograph. Hey, thanks for coming to see me.
Right.
You guys connected. And this young man that interviewed him, look at the connection they had. And I'm not kidding. That day, I said, in the back of my mind, was telling me, maybe I should have my wife and son go get ice cream or something. And I need to talk to Jason for a minute. Because I was feeling something. Because this is right before I did chemo. So I was feeling something there. Because I saw his face when I told him, hey, I got to do chemo. Here's what I'm up against. And I just want to thank you for always encouraging me. Okay. And there was something, he connected with me and there was something going on. And I wish that I had, of course, said, hey, go get ice cream, guys. And I'm going to just talk with Jason for a minute. And told him, this is what I wish I told him. I would have said, I want to talk to you, not as Tommy Oliver, Ranger, or JDF. I want to talk to you, Jason, the real Jason. And I want to sit and I want to talk with you. And I don't want to talk about Power Rangers. I want to talk about you. I want to be there for you. All the encouragement you gave me through all the years and everything that gets me to where I am as a man now and a father now and a husband now, I want to give you something back just for you. And I want to talk to you for real. And I don't need to record it. And I don't need to be out there and tell all these stories. I will put my phone right over here and you could check it. It's not recording. And I want to just talk to you for real. I wish that I had said that to him. I'm not saying what I could have said could have changed everything, but I'm just saying
could have helped. It wouldn't have hurt anything.
It could have helped. Maybe it could have given him something to think about. From that, he would have had the phone number, you know, and maybe he would have called. Maybe he would have checked on me before I did chemo, you know, something. I don't know. It would have started something. And that's what the one thing I can't say. I can't blame myself for anybody's decisions that they make. That's true.
Right.
And I'm not going to blame myself for that. But I'm just saying, I wish I had taken that, you know, because my thinking was, oh, my son wants to go get cotton candy and ice cream. And he's got this huge line of people. You know, I'm legally handicapped. So they put me in line first and all the other people that aren't. There's a huge line behind him. and I don't want to take him away from all these wonderful people that came to see him. And but I should have said, what does Jason need right now? You know, because I'm thinking about what he's thinking about, trying to take care of the fans. You know, I'm trying to think on that wavelength, but at the same time, I'm still conflicted. Like, Jason needs something, you know, and I'm like, and then, you know, I go into chemo in November. Jason died, what was it, the 22nd of November? Let me pull that up. Is that about right? If I remember correctly, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So he died the 22nd. I started my first day of chemo 22nd of November.
Wow.
My wife told me not to look at my phone and wait for her to get there. And she told all the nursing staff, do not let him look at his phone. Do not let him hear any news, anything like that. Just, I need you guys to do that until I get there. It's real important. So she came and she told me.
Yeah.
And in my room, somebody had made me a special banner that was green, gold, and white for Green Ranger. And I was all going through this with the spirit and essence that Jason gave me of encouragement, the wonderful video he made me and everything. I was really riding on that as I was going through chemo. I was sitting in it. I was like, all right. And then my wife came in and told me what happened. And I went, oh, man. I said, and here's what I didn't tell anybody. I actually called Rising Sun Karate before this happened because I thought maybe I might be able to catch him and tell him, hey, I think we should talk. I actually did call. And his assistant, and she told me, oh, he's not here right now. He's actually traveling to conventions, but let me put your information down. He loves hearing this stuff, so let me take your stuff down. But I don't think he got the message. I don't think there was enough time. So I did try to get to him after the fact. And I was not, and I was writing on, Instagram, Facebook. I was trying to catch his attention because, like, if you really looked at Jason, maybe 5 years, 8 years before all this went down, he looked completely different.
Yeah.
And then when he started wearing the mohawk, when I saw him last and everything, he looked like a different guy. Like, it was coming out in him. Like, he was, and no disrespect, but he was looking older. He was looking worn. More worn than older, but he would just look like himself, but he was really worn down. When you see him,
that's what stress is going to do. That's what chronic stress does.
Yeah, you could see it because, like, if you look at him when he did the Bloodshot, the Valiant Universe movie, and then you see him when he's doing Legend of the White Dragon, like, night and day.
Yeah,
like it was really starting to take its toll on him, and you could see that it was heavy. There was a weight on him. And by that time, see, the reason I wanted to talk to him was because I was made aware that Tammie had served him the papers at the previous convention. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So I was aware that she was trying to put that divorce in effect. And so I wanted to talk with him to be like, listen, man, like, let me just let me talk to you, man. It feels like you need to talk to somebody because you got served at a convention, and I knew that had to be rough, and I wanted to just talk with him because I was told that he got served at a convention, and so that's what led to the conversation, you see, because he was going through that whole situation. And I knew that it was probably going to be very difficult for him to walk that path,
Right.
And that's how this all kind of came together. And I say all that not to be long-winded, but to say that I wish I had talked with him, I mean, I did, but I wish that I had taken it further because he really needed somebody. And that was the one thing Jason had kind of really hinted at, was that everybody wanted from him that's why he got along with Jason Faunt so well, because he said Jason Faunt was one of the people that didn't ask him for anything, you know, and was just cool because he was cool, you know. And so, and Johnny was in that boat, you know. I believe Amy was in that boat. I think David Yost was in that boat. So that explains a lot. And I wish that I had taken the, you know, just done it. I really wish. And it's one of the biggest things that haunts me and sits on me to this day, was that I had an opportunity. You know, Brandon Lee is the first death that really affected me, you know, but I didn't get a chance to know Brandon, but I was around Jason, you know, and it was like, it's a tough one.
Yeah. Well, I will say, just as your friend, just from like a friendship standpoint, I say you can't really put that on yourself, because at the end of the day, I don't want to say it wouldn't have made a difference, but you just can't put that on yourself, man. You know? And it's harder because it's not like this is someone who was just a phone call away, you know. And then given the situation at the convention where you got a chance, you know, the last time you saw him in person, you had all those people behind you, and then it's like, we know Jason and you've probably seen him multiple times, but it's like that rapport, like let's say it hadn't been established yet between you and him.
Yeah.
So we don't know how it would have been, you know, let's say like received, you know what I'm saying? Because you're still, because it's like, and that's the tough part about meeting people like that, is because we've seen them a million times, but then they're seeing you, you know, for the first time, second time, third time. And then even in the way that you meet them at conventions, it's kind of sort of in passing. So with that said, it's like, you can't put that on yourself, man. I mean, even let's say like someone who might have known him, it's like, yeah, you could have picked up the phone and called him, right? And I mean, and that's the whole important thing about checking in on your friends and picking up the phone and calling them. If they cross your mind, pick up the phone and call them. You know, if you have that relationship such where you can, you know, because I do that all the time. At least because the majority of my friends right now is just like mostly girls. You feel what I'm saying? And then obviously like you, and then a couple other guys that I know. But it's like, if she crosses my mind where I'm like, yo, I wonder how she's doing. Okay, let me call her. I'm like, are you okay? You good? You know what I'm saying? And then if something's happening, cool. You know? And I think that was the responsibility more so on the people that were in his inner circle, more so than like us. You feel what I'm saying? Because that was their responsibility. And I think for him, again, like I was saying earlier, it's really industry relationships. For real. Like, because it's like, if you only have a relationship with somebody when you're working with them, but then when you don't work with them, you don't talk to them like that, that's not really your friend. Y'all just had a relationship that was based on that common place that you guys were meeting at. If I have a coworker and we talk, we chop it up when we're at work, yeah, cool. But then if I stop working there and I don't talk to him anymore, that's not really my friend. So like, let's say, you know, when Walter saw Jason, you know, for the last time, and then they had and you know the video that I'm talking about where they had that interaction and then they embraced and stuff. But it's like, if you don't really talk to him when you guys are not at conventions, that's not your friend. Like, yeah, you guys had a working relationship, but you weren't, it wasn't personal enough where he might have peeped that. And let's say maybe if he did, it was an industry relationship. So he's like, yo, that's on him. That's none of my business. Think about it. A lot of industry relationships are like that, where they might can see that something is amiss, but they're like, hey, I don't know him like that. I just work with him. That ain't none of my business. And a lot of people probably felt that way. It's industry shit. How many friends can you really rely on? Even his assistant, he's confiding in her, but that's still a working relationship. I cut her checks.
Right.
I got a wife, things not going right with her. You know what I mean? And then let's say if I am stepping out and dating other women, they're only rocking with me because of who I am. I don't know, you know, what his relationship was with his mother or other relatives. But again, it's like, yo, it's all smoke and mirrors. So who do you turn to?
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any validity to the toxicology report that, you know, the substances that were in his system. But those, unfortunately, were the things that he may have allegedly have turned to. And I don't fault him for that, because, yo, that some people, that's a human thing. People are going to turn to the things that they feel they need to turn to in order for them to feel better about what they got going on. Some people turn to healthier things. Some people turn to unhealthy things. I
Yeah,
don't judge JDF for any of the things that he did at all, because again, he was just human. He was a very strong person that had a moment of weakness that went on for too fucking long, and no one around him saw that, and he didn't feel like he can turn to anybody around him. If that's the case,
yeah. That's
so.
that's kind of the thing about it is like, what I did hear was that he did try to reach out to those people. He did try to call people before this all went down, and nobody picked up the phone.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You could be mad famous. You could be mad famous, and people aren't going to pick up the phone because it's industry shit. It's industry shit. Before somebody is going to make a decision like that, people like that are going to at least try, because it's not that they don't want to live. It's they're trying to find reasons to keep going. They're running on E. They need something to fuel them up to keep going. And you are going to try stuff where you're going to call a friend, have a conversation. You're going to turn to different things that's going to fuel you to keep going. I have moments like that where I'm like, yo, yeah, I know what to say to somebody to keep them going, but I don't always know what to say to myself. You know what I mean? And then even then, that self-talk only goes but so far sometimes. And those things is easier said than done. You know what I'm saying? To tell somebody, yo, keep your head up, man. I know it's hard right now, but you got to keep going. You got to keep believing. Yo, that's easier said than done, especially when you're by yourself and all you have is your thoughts to keep you company. Yo, that's a battle in itself.
Right.
And it's hard to hurdle that. So when you're going to pick up the phone to people that you think got your back and they don't even pick up the phone, yo, yeah, you're going to start to think like, yeah, yo, no one gives a fuck. And real, genuine, authentic friends are very few and far between. And when you're an adult, especially at his age, yeah, it's kind of hard to find people to care. I feel like, yeah, when you're younger, it's a little bit easier. You know what I'm saying? But when you're in your late 40s, it's hard to find people to care. And therapy, yes, I always encourage therapy, for anybody that's going through something. But even with that, it's like I had a session and I told the therapist, I was like, yeah, all right, you care, right? But what's going to happen when I don't have insurance no more? You're not going to be here no more. I told her that straight up and she couldn't say nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, they care, but they care because you're paying them. They're not somebody that's going to be there no matter what. So that's why, and a lot of people, they view that way about therapy. I mean, I know that about therapy, but I know therapy is a tool that you use. You're not projecting all your problems onto somebody else for them to solve. It's so much deeper than that. But to keep going on what I'm saying, JDF really just, I just think he was very blessed in his life to accomplish the things that he accomplished, but a lot of that stuff was material. So he was successful in the material world, but spiritually, he was lacking a lot. And that's not something that materialism can really compensate for, because it's like when you have a void inside, you can't say, okay, I have a fancy car or I got a big house. I know what it's like to be in a big ass house by yourself. And yeah, that's not enough. That's not enough to put the keys in the house and you're just in it by yourself.
Right.
You in a hotel and it's just you and your thoughts, yo. Trust me, it's a fucking battle. I'm talking about, like, I know what it's like where the voice that's in my head is thrashing me for a mistake that I made that I felt like I shouldn't have made that mistake. And people are saying, oh, don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up. Yo, it's not that simple. It's a battle. You got to fight. Like, that shit is no fucking joke. And even now, in this day and age right now, people still don't take mental health seriously. They don't. Even for celebrities. To have real, genuine people in your life that are going to be there for you and not judge you, that's a blessing. And that's why I've even told people sometimes where it's like, yo, you don't have falling outs with certain types of people in your life. Because there are people that are going to be put in your path that are going to be there to help you and move you forward in your true purpose, not necessarily materialism. They're there to help you spiritually. I don't think JDF had people like that in his life. And maybe if he met them, he probably met them in passing or some shit like that. I feel like maybe his career as an actor, martial artist, kind of got in the way of him meeting the right people because he was too busy, signing autographs and being that motivational guy. You need that for yourself. And that's another thing that the psychiatrist said. He was like, yo, like, instead of you being the one shouldering people's traumas and their struggles and all of that, yo, you need that. Stop being that for other people because you need that. And sometimes, again, like ambition and that go-getter mentality, I got to keep going, made him neglect that part of himself. And Instagram Live was his outlet where he was voicing that. Because it's like some of those things, like, yeah, I felt that way before. I've written poetry. He wrote poetry just like me. Those were the cries for help.
Yeah.
It's like, yo, like these are not just words. No, this is real life. This is a real situation that I'm dealing with. People thought, oh, this is just a video, JDF, yeah, cool. And it's not like, because even for me, right, it's not like I would feel that if I were to DM JDF, he's going to respond and want to talk to me. That's the fucked up part about it. So even if I were to watch, one of his poetry videos and feel that way, if I DM'd him, is he going to respond? Probably not. Probably not. Because he don't know me like that. That's what I'm saying. So I don't know. It's just a tough situation, all around. And I still firmly believe that, the way that I make JDF proud, even though I've never met him, is to never give up, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to keep going. Like, even if shit, and again, like, I know what it's like because even me, I have my own personal struggles in life right now. But it's like, yo, like, you fucking got to keep going. Because one thing, I always be saying, like, one of my favorite boxers, but a boxer that I highly respect, Caleb Plant, because basically he had his wife was pregnant and they had a baby, and basically their first daughter had a ton of complications when she was born, and right before he had a title fight, his daughter, she died. In mind, she wasn't even 3 months old, died. You know what I'm saying? And one thing that Charlemagne asked him, because it was a Breakfast Club interview, and he said, like, how do you keep, how did you keep going with like all the adversity that you went through? Like, how did you just continue to show up in the world, man? And then he was like, if you quit, however it is, like whatever's going on for you that you don't like, is going to be, it's going to be like that forever. If you quit, it's going to be like that forever if you quit. But if you keep going, things will get better. And that's what he told himself. Like, yo, if you keep going, it's going to work out if you keep going. But if you quit, it's going to be like that forever. And I truly believe that how you leave this world is going to have an impact on whatever happens in that realm that you cross over into. So it's like, if you die in peace, then your transition is going to be that of peace. But if you die in turmoil or some sort of like negative way, you're not going to cross over peacefully. And this is why I guess people say rest in peace, because that's really a thing. It's like if you leave and you have unfinished business, that's going to be on your heart. That's going to be on your soul, your spirit. It's like, because we're just like bodies, but it's our spirit that makes our bodies move. That makes It's your spirit that makes you. You know what I'm saying? That's going to make you different from the next Drew that might live in another, state somewhere that might look just like you. And that's what kind of hurts me. That's what hurt me, is the fact that he went out like that.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe that someone like him that gave so much to so many people, that he just deserved so much better. You know what I'm saying? But what are your final thoughts, bro? Because I think that's pretty much all I have to say on the matter.
Let's try, everybody. If they do a documentary again, let's try to do it right. Get everybody's stories involved, get everybody there. And even those iffy people like Austin and Walter, put them on the spotlight and ask them those hard questions. If you really want to do a documentary, if you really want to talk about it, then go ahead and go there. Don't let it destroy, because remember, JDF always said, do not let it destroy your heroes. Don't let it do that. But also understand that they are people. They do make bad decision choices and good ones as well. Unfortunately, on Austin, he has taken things to a place almost of no return, where really, really, really messed up. And he still carries the flag that he did nothing wrong. And no disrespect against Walter, but I'll say this, like, Walter, yeah,
That's
Walter's
his
cool
boy.
for the most part, but you hang out with Austin St. John.
That's his
And
boy.
you should be telling him, listen, man, you should be doing better. And if he don't want to listen, you should be trying to move in a different direction, like distance yourself from the stuff that's coming, because the backlash that's getting ready to hit Austin St. John is going to be heavy. You know, you got the U.S. government leaning on your shoulders. And, you know, we got to do better. We got to do better. That whack apology you gave to JDF, it wasn't an apology, it was just a talk. It was whack. And, you know, to have such a disrespect for people, even after their passing, to take pictures with one's wife and daughter and have such a disrespect even in death, says a lot about you, man. So I say all that to say, hey, let's do better as people. We want to do a documentary. Let's do it right. Let's clear Ricardo Medina. Let's get this done right. Put that lady with her soft white underbelly talking about hooking up with every piece of deputy sheriff she could get. Put that out there. Do this right. And let's get people the right respect that they deserve. And that's my thoughts on the whole thing.
And on that note, if you made it to the end of this video, I hope you enjoyed it. What are your thoughts? Please be sure, as always, to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.